Good morning and welcome to the second day of the 2024 edition of the annual political dialogue under the Initiative for Coal Regions in Transition. I see that we have a little bit extra free seats in the hall today. I heard that it has been a short night for some of you. We won't be counting the dead, but we will take this as a sign of a good party. So congratulations to the heroes that made it here today. It's going to be an interesting day, a little shorter than yesterday. Yesterday was quite a long day. We're aware of that, but nevertheless, some interesting discussions ahead. Allow me maybe to also greet the audience online. It must have been a little bit easier for you to be with us here today. Let me recap the discussions from yesterday. We have discussed the industrial transition in coal regions. We have discussed the brownfield development and revitalization issues in coal regions, coal plus regions, and we have also touched upon the issue of energy poverty and energy efficiency. We have two main topics on the agenda today. One of them will be dealing with district heating, so it's going to be a little bit more technical maybe in nature. And then we will focus a little bit also on the soft part, let's say, of the transition, which will be skills for the net zero industries of the future. As always, let us have some logistics information, especially for those of you who have maybe just joined us today. We have simultaneous interpretation available through the Interactio app, which can be downloaded for iOS and Android operating systems. You just simply use the event codes on the screen, so APD 2024 for those attending in person, and APD 2024 for those attending online. And the languages available are Czech, German, Polish, Slovenian, Spanish, and German. And also, just to mention, there is Wi-Fi available throughout the premises, and the login details are shown below. As yesterday, the questions and answer sessions will be duly announced. Simply raise your hand. You will be given a microphone, and there will be no interaction, unfortunately, with the online audience. I am obliged to let you know also just quickly the logistics for the departures this afternoon. Those of you who are leaving a little bit early, there will be a shuttle service to the airport at 1 o'clock, and lunch boxes will be provided. And for those of you staying, there will be lunch served afterwards. So without further ado, let's maybe deep dive into the first session of the day, the future of district heating and cooling. The second one being top of mind maybe at this point in time in coal regions. And I invite to the stage Mr. Karsten Roth-Ballard from the Secretariat of the Initiative for Coal Regions. The floor is yours, and take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And inspired by the lyrics of yesterday, it's heat, heat, baby kit. Today, talking about transition of district heating systems in coal regions in transition, we will dive into the implementation part, how to advance on renewables within the grid, how to communicate this to citizens. Lessons learned we will share also from the district heating working group, which we established as part of the Secretariat, a lovely group that came together at the beginning of last year and worked hard until the beginning of this year, also working on a toolkit that we will touch upon later. So be tuned. But first of all, I'd like us to interact a little bit because we will ask, I will ask questions to you as well, if you want to. So the first question to you in this room, and maybe we can raise the light a little bit so I can see the answers that you're providing right now to the question, what is the temperature in the room? Is it 23 degrees, below 23 degrees, or exactly 23 degrees? So above 23 degrees, raise your hand. Below, point to the bottom, or exactly 23 degrees. Huh? It's 23 degrees. At least that's what they told me. Now a question, do you know the source of heating in your household? Are you supplied via a district heating system? Hands up. Yeah, some in the room, some in the room. Very good. Are you supplied by gas? Hands up. Okay, that's almost even. Then, are you supplied by coal to heat your homes? 1, 2, yeah. Yeah, there is a tricky. Double answers are possible as well. What about wood? Ah, I have a double system as well. Okay, a heat pump, maybe? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, double answers count as well. Okay, now a little bit more technical. This is a technical session. Just 2 more questions and then we are done. We are advancing. The EED demands cities of what size to develop strategic heating and cooling plans? If you think cities of 35,000 inhabitants, you point into this direction. 45,000, you raise your finger, and 55,000 over there. So, cities of what size do need to plan for heating and cooling? Fingers up, yes, indeed, 45. That's the answer. Last but not least, by tendency, we have an indicative target for renewables to be annually increased within the district heating grid. Now you can relax, no more raising hands, but just leaning to one side or another. If you think the annual tendency is 1.5 indicative target of renewable shares annually added, then lean to that side. If you think it's 1.5 more renewable increase, just stay straight in your seat. And if it's 2 degrees, you lean to that side. So leaning, please, or straight? Yeah, the commission knows it's 1.1. Very good. Okay, with that interaction, I think we have now the pleasure and the stage prepared for the keynote speech to be delivered by Paula Pino, the director of DG ENA. A very warm welcome again to you, Paula, on the stage. Thank you so much for being here. The dedication for CRIT, for the Secretariat, Coal Regions in Transition. The floor is yours to talk about the framework of the EED and the Renewable Energy Directives.
Thank you, Carsten. You just facilitated my work. Everybody is woken up by now, and I'm double honored with all of you here because for a moment we were discussing and fearing that we would be speaking to ourselves this morning after the successful party yesterday. And thank you again. What a standard, what a standard. Really nice. So yesterday we talked about the role of decarbonization in buildings and how that could also tackle energy poverty. Today we are on a different subject, and we're speaking about a sector which is also a big consumer of energy, which is heating and cooling. And in fact, this sector accounts for half of the EU's final energy consumption, and what is more, is predominantly dependent on fossil fuels, which we don't like that much. So when you have such sectors, buildings, and then heating and cooling is the big part which is contributing to this high consumption of energy in the buildings sector, it is obvious that its successful decarbonization is not just an option, but a real need that we need to tackle, and that it is obviously also not as easily done as it is said. And we need to approach it with innovative solutions, with policy measures, with collective actions, and again, as we repeated yesterday so often, bringing along the citizens who are concerned by it, if we are really to ensure a sustainable, a resilient energy future for all. And Carsten already helped us refreshing our memory or our knowledge about the new legislation which is in place and which is also tackling heating and cooling. And we have a revised energy efficiency directive, which precisely, and also the renewables directive, which aim to double the share of renewable energy sources in district heating systems. So there's a clear target set at EU level in legislation, and several milestones have been set for this objective to be reached by 2050. So phased in time, because we know it cannot be done overnight, but with clear milestones as a reference so that everybody knows where should we be between now and 2050. Then the Energy Efficiency Directive foresees two planning obligations. One is that for the first time, member states need to conduct a comprehensive heating and cooling assessment, identifying what are the policies, what are the measures that are needed to increase energy efficiency and to reduce the carbon emissions in heating and cooling. So the work starts with a diagnostic, so to say, by the member states. Then, and secondly, it is also very important to ensure clean transition in the heating and cooling sector at local level. And here, again, Carsten asked the question, that's where this provision in the Energy Efficiency Directive comes in and foresees that all large municipalities having a population above 45,000 people need to prepare local heating and cooling plans. This applies to 1,300 municipalities in the EU, where more than 1/3 of the EU's population lives. Doesn't apply to Velenje, as it has less than 45,000 people. Now, the idea is to have an increasing use of clean energy sources in district heating. And in this context, we have also set out, and again, it's now applicable in all member states, a revised definition of what is an efficient district heating and cooling. What does it mean? And there are, again, definitions which vary in time. So we say, as when we are close now to 2024, so the first milestone is 2027, we say, well, by 2027, what is an efficient district heating and cooling system is a system which uses at least 50% of renewable energy sources. And then the definition goes on, and it becomes stricter and stricter until 2050, where it should be consisting alone of renewable energy sources. So again, because we do understand this is not something that you can do overnight. So it's basically a gradual pathway to reduce the role of fossil fuels in district heating until 2050. And it is a steady direction, obviously evolving, and by 2050, all the energy supply in efficient district heating and cooling should originate, as I said, either from renewable energy sources or waste heat. What are the practical consequences of this definition? One, very important, state aid. State aid may not be granted to district heating unless it will meet the criteria for this efficient district heating system. So an important consideration. Secondly, all the large district heating systems need to establish plans to meet this definition of efficient district heating. Third, on top of the definition, the Energy Efficiency Directive prohibits support, so financial support, to any new fossil-based capacities. So no new district heating based on fossil fuels, except for natural gas until 2030. Now, this transition of the district heating is obviously a challenge for coal regions. And we are in a coal region, and we are very well aware of the challenges that come our way. But mind you, Velenje is really serving as an example of a town which is a coal town and that is ambitiously working towards a climate neutral future. And for those of you who, like me yesterday, went and visited the thermal power plant and district heating system Sostanje here in Velenje, and we could see that indeed the plan is to go for a gradual transition to renewable energy sources. And I don't know about you, but it certainly didn't leave me indifferent. I have to say, and that's really the importance of doing the site visits. It's very different from reading on the briefings, on the documents, and then visiting it. And for me, I didn't come out of it indifferent. Why? Because what we saw clearly was undoubtedly very modern thermal power plant, fully digitalized, newest technology, state of the art. And indeed, if you look at it, we see it could be running for still a few decades to come, no doubt. But on the other hand, it is running on the most polluting source of energy. It is running on lignite. And hence, where do we strike the balance? Where do we strike the balance also against the political objective, which is not set, by the way, by the Commission, but has been agreed by the member states, by all member states, because there's this tendency to say, yes, Brussels now is imposing us a coal phase out. Well, this is something that is agreed by the whole of the heads of state in the EU, and for a good reason. So, on the other hand, we do see that, yes, we need to phase out coal, but we need to be sure what will we be replacing it by, right? And when we come out of such a thermal power plant, we ask ourselves, okay, so we're phasing it out, the plan is by 2033, what will be the new sources? And I'm encouraged to see that the authorities here and the company are looking into alternatives, that a lot of stakeholders are coming with ideas, with help, with suggestions. Some of them are sitting here in the audience, but we cannot underestimate the challenge. It is a town that has been building its social tissue, its economic activity around coal. And we're very well aware of that even when it phases out, you will still need people to maintain and to decommission it. And so you still need to attract young people to work on it, despite the fact that we're looking into phasing it out. So all of these are challenges that we're all aware of. And that is why a town like Velenje and others across the EU, which are going through the same challenge, simply cannot be left alone in this challenge. And that's why I'm very pleased to know that the municipality of Velenje is a member of the District Heating Working Group, which is an initiative set up by the Secretariat of the Initiative for Coal Regions in Transitions. Carsten is a very active member there and is participating precisely in this working group, helping the municipalities concerned with the decarbonization of district heating. And we are also glad to mention that Velenje has been receiving support for the decarbonization of the district heating through the Target program. We heard yesterday the Target program is a program from the EIB, which provides also financial assistance in this challenge. Because obviously it is not easy, it cannot be done overnight, and it needs the contribution from stakeholders across the board, policymakers, of course, in Brussels, in the EU, in the Commission, at local level, at government level, but also the industry. And we will need to be all going in the same direction. And look also at what are the opportunities that will be arising, because the challenge is that for such transition, you first see the costs, right? And the people concerned see the costs. The benefits are somewhere out there in the future. And that's a big challenge, because how do you conquer and persuade? Conquer is not a good word. How do you persuade? How do you get people along when you will not necessarily see immediately the benefits? But I can see us in some years around the lake as we were yesterday, and knowing that not only is it a beautiful landscape as we could enjoy yesterday, but it is also attracting, for instance, tourism, because it is really also a sustainable, a clean town, as it is already today, but going a fundamental step forward. So that's the vision. It's not an easy course to go along, but the message is you are not alone, and this applies to several coal regions in the same situation across the EU. And I think with the panel that we'll be having now, it will become even more concrete about challenges and opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paula Pinho. Municipalities that are now doing strategic heating and cooling planning, you are not alone. So talk to each other. This is what we do here on stage as well, together with you. So first of all, I call on stage Andras Takas. He is Senior Policy Advisor for Euroheat and Power. He is specialized in EU energy and industry policies. An applause to him. Dasha Jakubikova, City Manager of Patitansk in Slovakia, part of the Upper Nitra coal region. Welcome. We have with us Balzas Hegi. He is environmental expert and part of the Coal Commission Secretariat in Hungary from the Esterházy Károly Catholic University. Welcome. We have also Gasper Skaya, director of the Velenje utility company. He is legal professional and director with background in economic law, management, and organizational leadership. Further, we have Stefan Recicziger. He is scientific researcher in the Department of Cities and Networks at the AEE Intec in Gleisdorf, Austria. Welcome. And we have with us Jaroslav Starka from DG Regio, the European Commission. He is responsible for coordinating and implementing the Just Transition Fund in Czechia and Slovakia. Welcome. Thank you so much. So a packed panel. I asked for snippet answers of 1 minute only, and then we see how we go. So first of all, actually, I also gave you the possibility, as we haven't had presentations, but maybe there is one message which you really like also to emphasize on. How do you contribute to the transition of the district heating system? And as I said, it's 1 minute, off you go, and off the slide for Andras.
Thank you very much for inviting me. As Euroheat and Power is involved in many ways how to decarbonize district heating and cooling. For example, I'm working on EU policies, so we create a beneficial legislative environment for decarbonization and introduction of renewables and waste heat. But we have also colleagues who are working on EU projects. We are involved in 18 EU projects. For example, Stefan's support DSC project is also one of the projects that we are involved in, and we are collecting knowledge and best practices as well.
Very good. Good practice set ahead. Dasha, over to you.
Good morning. I'm working as a city manager in the city of Partizánske, Slovakia. We are not a typical coal city because we do not have mines, but we are part of the Upper Nitra coal region. Why I am here? Because we as a municipality are owning a heating company. And our company is at the moment operating natural gas boilers and biomass boilers. And it happened to us some already, I think, 4 years ago, that an NGO called Friends of Earth came to us and said, well, you are doing a good job, but you could do better. And this is how our road toward decarbonization of our district heating system started. We are at the moment, as Mrs. Pinho said, diagnostics, making a diagnosis of our heating system. That is the plan, which is in the middle of the slide. And at the same time, we are exploring all the options, and I'm the one who is communicating for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Balas, how you do contribute to the transition of the district heating system?
Yeah. Thank you. As you can see in the slide, my organization is supporting the DH transition by providing capacity for the development of the Eger district heating decarbonization strategy. In Hungary, district heating system are seriously lack of capacity in this field. So their capacity is sufficient to operate, maintain, and somehow district heating system to access the right technical assistance programs, resources, and of course we can provide our international network in the field of decarbonization. We help them to design proposals, overcome the language barriers, and try to bring ideas and barriers to the decision-making level. As a part of this, we help the EGER district heating to submit and implement a target technical assistance program, which will form the basis for the further decarbonization measurements.
Thank you so much. Over to Kasper.
Hello to all of you. I'm from utility company Velenje, which is operating the second largest district heating system in Slovenia. And now we are in process of transforming into renewables, which will be said a little bit more later.
Okay, thank you. Three phases, and you can see the roadmap. Actually, Velenje is on the way to carbon neutrality by 2030. Congratulations to that target. We will observe you. Stefan.
At AE Intec, we are an application-oriented research institute, mainly dealing with energy, energy for buildings, energy for industry, and of course, energy for district heating. That's where I come in. And what we're doing is having international projects like drawing up transformation plans, working with municipalities to develop transformation plans. That is also where we cooperate with Euroheat and Power in the Support DHC project. And the second pillar is that we run a quality management system for biomass-based district heating in Austria. It's called QM Heizwerke, or International QM Biomass-Based District Heating. And interesting thing is we currently have a project together with the municipality of Velenje, where we want to combine both things, do a transformation plan, and look into how we can apply this management system, this quality management system, also to a larger system like it is in Velenje.
Very good, and we see you here in action very authentically, so proven. Then over to Jaroslav.
Yes, hello, thank you. Actually, I work in DG Regio in European Commission. I am responsible for the coordination of Just Transition Fund in Czechia and Slovakia. How we try to help is to provide support concrete solutions for the decarbonization of central heating systems. We have one, I would say, I hope successful example, which was shared yesterday in the panel. City of Prievidza was facing similar challenge as Velenje. 2018 was a decision taken to shut down the coal power plant in Nováky, 1 million CO2 per year. And now I can say we have been very much involved. We provided Jasper's technical assistance. And now I'm happy that City of Prievidza has found a solution for alternative system of central heating, which is well working and functioning by now, which I can confirm since City of Prievidza is present here in this room. Thank you.
Very good. You know the details. We are coming to the details now. Andras, the future of renewable energy district heating systems will be a mix of different choices, different elements. So actually, what do you observe on a European scale? Which sources are well used and which are maybe underused? And could you have maybe inspiring facts for decision makers here in the room to also think about those sources?
Yeah. So it's very interesting to see in different countries what energy they use. It's very surprising that, for example, Denmark is leading on solar thermal district heating and cooling, while there are also very good examples in Latvia. We wouldn't say that these countries are so sunny. Here is much warmer, sunnier. But there they had a very supportive financial framework which enabled this development. Then we heard from the Hungarian District Heating Association as well that they struggle to use the geothermal source even if they have such a huge potential. And if that can be one of the reasons is the lack of subsurface data, which is not available. Then if they need to lift the temperature up to the district heating network level, then connecting to a heat pump is also a barrier for them because of the electricity prices and taxes. But to the contrary, in Belgium, there are so many new projects being developed. For example, 10 minutes away from the European Parliament in Brussels, they will finish in September a new geothermal district heating network, which is only shallow, 150 meters deep, and they connect to a heat pump. And we know that in Belgium, the electricity prices are very high, but they received good funding from the European Regional Development Fund and some universities to increase the public perception. So yeah, there are many different projects in all different European countries.
Maybe then looking at Dasha, can you complement, how do you, we heard about planning is important, how do you plan these technologies within maybe the scope of the next 5 years? How do you do it in your city?
I would say that
Ich würde sagen, dass wir eine Vision haben zurzeit und wir versuchen, alle Elemente zu studieren. Wir versuchen zu erforschen und wir haben einen Test im Gang für geothermische Energie in der Stadt. Wir versuchen, ob diese Bohrungen genug sind, um genug Wärme produzieren in unseren Fernwärmenetzwerke, auch mit den Wärmepumpen. Wir versuchen auch, wir können zum Beispiel auch Wärme wieder von der Wasserbehandlungswerk wieder rausholen. Denn wir haben eigentlich ein Fernwärmenetzwerk, das ist ein zentrales Heizwerk, aber das ist zum Teil dezentralisiert, denn die Stadt ist in 2 Teile aufgeteilt. Das Erste, was wir machen, ist, diese 2 Netzwerke natürlich zusammenzuschließen, damit die Hitze zum Beispiel aus der Geothermie zum Beispiel auch in das andere Netzwerk eingespeist werden könnte. Das ist die Vision, an der wir arbeiten.
some part of it, of course, there are more elements like heat storage, which is also a topic which I would not think about 2 years ago, and also photovoltaic or solar thermal plant on the former landfill which we have in the city.
Are you looking into waste heat as well?
Waste heat at the moment, not.
Not yet, okay.
Only wastewater.
But there is a lot out there. There was just a study published by Danfoss, a tremendous potential. But let's look into the mix. Now going to Hungary, and maybe here the question to Balázs through your district heating system, which has switched from coal to gas some time ago. What are the recent development in Eger?
Yeah, so in Eger, carbon reduction measurements have been carried out so far mainly on the demand side. So such as the installation of the district heating buildings, modernization of doors and windows and heat centers, and installing individual heat metering system. On the production side, the main investment have been the installation of more efficient gas boilers and some investment which help us to meet with the changing heat demand, such as installation of 80 cubic meter hot water tanks for heat storage. However, it has now become clear that if we want to achieve efficient district heating, the energy mix also needs to be changed. So our target project is still ongoing, and it's already has explored many options on how to change the currently used fuel. But at the same time, of course, many obstacles have been identified, and it seems that the current conclusion is that the best solution is to use biomass and rely on waste heat from gas generators owned by the private company. So the next step is to start planning the biomass investment based on the current results, involving a wide range of stakeholders, of course, and to find the right financial sources for both the planning and the implementation.
Okay, great. Well, talking about investment, I'm then jumping over to gentlemen and looking at Jaroslav. Here, through we heard from Dasha the example that district heating in the Slovakian coal town faced some challenges here and as well as solutions. You have the broader picture about Czech and also other Slovak cases. Can you maybe provide us more food for thought on these two countries?
Okay, I mean, I would start by saying that structural funds have always played very important role in the decarbonization and modernization of central heating systems in the past, and they are still playing a very important role under JTF and structural funds proper. For instance, we have been modernizing the distribution systems, enabling to lower the temperature and decrease the losses of the systems, which were sometimes very substantial. Both countries, Czechia and Slovakia, they rely very heavily on central heating systems. In Slovakia, namely, it is about 1.8 million people depending on central heating systems. In Czechia, it's around 40% of the population. In Czechia, we have more than 500 systems of central heating and 7,500 kilometers of pipes related to it. So you can imagine the magnitude and also the sensitivity for the population, because the price of heating, of course, is very important to the inhabitants, and we have to think about it all the time. In JTF, what we have been trying to support, I mentioned also already in the case of city of Prievidza, where we hope it will be possible in the future to accommodate more renewables. Now the city has more than 50% of energy is coming already from renewables. So that's big difference from the past where it was exclusively from the coal. I would like to mention two projects, one in Slovakia, which we hope it will materialize. It is the geothermal system of central heating in city of Košice, which is the second largest city in Slovakia, 250,000 inhabitants roughly, where we would like to support under JTF the geothermal system of central heating, which initially could provide 30 megawatts and could be scaled up to 90 megawatts and could provide the heat of about 50% of the total population, which we think it would be very significant. Similar case is being developed in Czechia, in Ústí region, in city of Litoměřice, where again it would be the system of geothermal heating, providing renewable source for a city of about 40,000 inhabitants.
Thank you. Well, you have thrown around the big numbers. Actually, we have a big number here as well. Jasper, you have the second largest district heating system in Slovenia, but it's also the oldest. So that's actually also why the Commission and the national government is taking a close look here of what you are doing. It's of strategic importance. So maybe you can share some challenges that you have faced for greening that large district heating systems, and how have you solved it?
Okay, I hope you won't mind. I will continue in Slovenian because we are hosting this event and we are very proud of our language. So if you could put back the slide. Kot rečeno, ja,
So the biggest problem is here how to save the distribution of this heat as we know it now. So this should be reliable and this should be also not expensive. Also today we spoke a lot about energy poverty, and this is one of goals we are aiming. We want to avoid this. And the second goal is the transformation of our heating system, which will go in 3 phases. As you see here, first phase is for renovation and digitalization of the distribution network. We have more than 10 kilometers of this network. Almost 100 stations will be modernized to lower the temperature regime and to prepare this heating system for renewable sources. This will come into play in the second phase. We have to know, we told already today, in this phase we have only coal for heating, only coal for heating right now in our plant Schosten. And until 2030, we want to come completely to renewable sources. This will be combination of different production sources. You talk about this already today. We will use wood biomass, larger heating pumps for with solar energy, with solar production. So this will be mix of the most economic solutions. And the third phase has to go together with first two phases is the energy renovation of all the constructions of public and private constructions and buildings. And here we will need support from the state and European Union because we need funds for this.
Then looking at Stefan and talking about the different ecosystem of district heating systems, different stakeholders coming together, potentially strategizing the future ahead. Maybe you can counsel us a little bit on how to improve this relation, this customer relationship. Any lessons learned here?
I think it is, as you said, it is really important that the district heating operator and the municipality, or be it a city, really work together, that they talk to each other. And in my experience, there is no typical example. There are good examples, there are bad examples. Unfortunately, a neighbor city of mine is a bad example because district heating operator and the mayor, they don't really work well together, and that actually led to a delay of a new district heating system, a delay of 2 to 3 years, and that is really a bad example. I think here in Velenje we have the opposite. We see that you are talking together, you're planning together, the city and the district heating operator, and this is how it should be. What we are doing, especially with smaller municipalities, is that we offer kind of a structured dialogue to them. So we organize meetings with district heating operators, with the municipality. We provide data for the city, you know, heat demand, where the heating systems are, where the district heating lines are, and really have, for instance, just an afternoon to talk about the plans that are in the municipality and the plans that the district heating operator has. And this works quite well, and this already led to some good results.
Great, thank you so much. Dear audience, my panelists do very well. They do what I asked them to do. Well, we're sticking to this 1 minute. You will be asked in a minute as well to be involved, to ask some questions. So be prepared. But before that, a question here again to Dasha. Maybe how do you are actually managing a department of more than 80 people, and you are responsible for the decarbonization of the district heating system. Now, the question is often not about the technology, which is there and available to decarbonize, but actually about communication of using this technology. So how do you communicate internally and maybe also externally to the citizens about this process?
Yeah, communication is a magic word. I'm managing a city office, which is providing a lot of services to the city, and decarbonization topic is only one of the topics. We have a municipal company which is doing the heating and providing the heating, and that's why the topic for us is even more difficult, because we are doing the strategy and we are implementing the strategy. So at the moment we are assessing what we have on the table and starting to evaluate which way we should go. We have to involve in communication not only the management of the city, but also the city parliament members. Also communication with the citizens who are in the end affected by all the changes, not only by the price of the heat, but it's a municipal company. It's very sensitive because if the project goes wrong, then it has a very big influence on the city budget. So what we are now trying to do is to win confidence of the citizens, and there was a study, a university helped us to conduct a study to assess what are the attitudes of our citizens towards this change. And it was surprising to see that the people are really expecting a change because they want to live in a green city. So the topic of the environment should be one of the headlines which we are going to communicate. Second was, and I also see it here in Velenje, that the citizens are proud when the city is using something which is up to date, you know, which is best or better than somewhere else. So I think these are the two main things which we have to, after we prepare the project thoroughly and we'll tackle all the financial and technical problems, we will communicate. What is another thing is that we have a city company that will go through the transformation. And you know, every change generates resistance, and we have to win on board not only the citizens, but also the workers and the people working for the company, because they already have certain know-how, but we have to transform them to the new system. And I think this will be even more difficult task in managing the change, not only communicating the change.
Thank you so much. This deserves an applause. I think there are very clear messages. So maybe we raise the light a little bit so we see the hands of people here asking a question. So a microphone will be served to you. Just raise your hand and interact, please. I pre-warned you. There's one. Please, maybe you can introduce yourself and then ask your question. If you can direct it to a specific person, please do so.
I have a philosophical question. My name is Lenka Ilčíková. So there is a question. Do the citizens depend on district heating or do they benefit from district heating?
Is there a special person you would like to direct to?
No.
No. Okay. Another question to be taken up? Yes, here the gentleman in the front. We don't hear you.
Vantofri. Good morning. Milošević Hrvoje from New Hit, a French company based in Bordeaux, working internationally. Question for everybody of your citizens and controlling the citizens and municipalities. Are you communicating also with the government, or you are free in your decisions to change something in your municipality? Or you are depending also on the governmental laws and other things? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question over there in the back, and then we come to answers. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good morning, Natasha Kovacic from Bankwatch. I just wanted to ask if any of panelists can answer on what should be a best model for the small and mid-sized towns when it comes to the technical assistance and raising capacities, because many of them actually have not financial help to go to some higher investment costs, but they still need to be decarbonized, especially if they're in coal-depending regions. So what should be a model if it's like coupling them, and you know how to provide even those data for the technical assistance when they are needed? Thanks.
Thank you. I think you offered already a solution, coupling them. I really like it. But going over to the panel, so first question, district heating system dependent or not dependent? Is there an answer to that interrelation? Kasper, you are the expert. You are the manager.
Ja, prav gotovo je cilj, da bi.
Yes, absolutely. The goal is that district heating systems would serve the users, that it would be reliable and acceptable in regards to price, but this is certainly a step that we have to take together. The communication will be very important as well. so that users will be able to understand why the transformation of the district heating system is necessary and what the final goal is that we want to achieve. And in the process, we also need the support by the state and by the European Commission. And this is also answers the second question. From our side, I can say that we have very good relationships with all the ministries, with the government, which is truly standing by our side. I am certain that our ambitious goals, I believe in them, and I hope that it will be like that in the future as well.
Thank you. Any complementing answers to that? Stefan, maybe?
Yep, it's working. Maybe on the question regarding citizens and who depends on whom. In Austria, for instance, we had a huge run towards district heating, especially in the smaller communities. I'm not sure if you know the Austrian situation. We have about 2,500 district heating systems, although we are quite small, and they are mainly based on biomass, small systems. And in the last years, more or less everybody wanted to connect, privates and also the industry. So I think the people really want to do that because they see it as a price stable system that really gives them a certainty of constant prices and a supply security.
Thank you. Maybe you can answer the last question as well. If you have smaller municipalities and you would like to provide technical assistance to them, how do you make that most efficiently? Do you bundle them, or you can then not provide individual answers to individual processes or difficulties?
Bundling would be one thing. In Austria, we typically do it via planning. We have engineering offices that specialize in district heating, and they do a pretty good job when supporting small towns, small municipalities. And as I said before, it's for small towns, I think biomass is an adequate source to fuel a district heating system. It's something different in larger towns, like it is here in Velenje. You have to think about different solutions, but for small and medium-sized towns, that's definitely one possible solution.
Okay, Dasha, you wanted to complement.
I would like to add that we are a small system in Partizanske, and we are tackling the thing of the technical expertise. And we would really appreciate if there would be a sort of a platform in Slovakia that would be gathering the best available technology and practice, because for us who are not experienced in these best technologies, we have a really difficulty to first of all find, and second assess whether it is suitable for us or not. The biomass we already have, so we are talking about the other renewable resources technologies. So sharing the expertise and having a platform of reliable information, not only companies selling heat pumps or convincing you that their technology is the best, that would really help.
Okay, thank you. Jaroslav?
I could add that I share that especially for smaller municipalities or medium size, it is of course necessary to provide technical assistance. Here I could mention that, for instance, DigiRegio is providing possibility to have peer-to-peer exchanges. So meaning, exchange of experience of individual cities. What also is possible is to have Jasper's assistance, which we have had very positive experience in Slovakia, because they could possibly look, deeper and also assess what would be the possible technical solution, compare the technical solutions, and also estimate the price of heat for end users, which is also very, very important in the process. So there are possibilities. I think there is never enough technical assistance, but it needs to be organized in a way that it speaks, I would say, in one voice and is going to one direction, which I think it's the good for the consumer and trying to increase the share of renewables in the systems.
Great, and I can actually congratulate you and the team of yours who is behind also the technical assistance provided. You observe very much what is going on the ground and trying to help here as well. The spotlight can now shine on the stage again with a little bit of darkness for the audience. Thank you for the interaction. We will come to you one more time in a few minutes. I would now like to go to the lessons learned. The lessons learned we have developed as part of the district heating working group, but also beyond, based on your experience. Andras, would you say that there are particular aspects for the district heating decarbonization which are specific to coal plus regions in transition, which you have observed and discussed between the breaks or during the study visits? And maybe you can also share some mistakes that you have observed as a network, Euroheat and Power, which others shouldn't do. So brilliant failures, so to say, brilliant because we don't need to do them again. Over to you.
Yes, I think Velenje is a very excellent example for how to do it correctly. We see that in Velenje there are many industries. The local district heating network is connected to 650 industrial users. According to the reuse heat map, what we developed, there are 5 food retailers providing waste heat. There is also a wastewater treatment plant. There is the mine which could be used. There is a lot of waste heat could be used. And another example from the core regions is Upper Nitra region from Slovakia, where they also use solar thermal and they store the heat in the mines. And the solar thermal is on landfills. So I see these aspects, the waste heat used from the industrial processes which are specific for the core regions as very beneficial. Then in Velenje, you also have the oldest district heating network of Slovenia and the second largest. So core regions often have large district heating networks which are hard to decarbonize, and these need modernization and decarbonization. So here funding is very relevant as well. As a misstep, I would say transition from coal to gas, which is, we saw that before the energy crisis was still commonly practiced, but now all the prices and the dependence on the imports has a huge influence on European citizens. So I'm happy to see that Velenje is going to use completely renewable sources directly from coal to renewables.
Great. Then maybe, Gaspar, if you could take us not only forward in time with the 3 different phases, but I put you now into a time machine and we go backwards. And maybe you have some lessons from the process you have undergone already that you would like to share with us.
V bistvu
the setup of production sources to renewable sources of energy is a process that firstly includes studies which will show which are the possibilities to use renewable energy sources. And then we come to designing such ideas. We come to placing such facilities into locations, spatial plans. Then we have financing sources, and this is a long-term process. And if we look back into the past, I could certainly say that we would change the fact that we would have to do the step more early, despite the fact that we thought that the production of coal and the coal plant Schosten will be more of a long term in production, but we saw now that the designing, placing into space are long term processes, and this is one of the largest challenges that are coming at us.
As early as possible, do initiate the process. I get that message very straight. This is good. Then maybe we talked about switching of bridging technologies, and actually you have done so, if I'm not mistaken, in Hungary. So any lessons learned or any recommendation now for those that are still considering?
Yeah. We have the same opinion with András. We discussed it yesterday about that. So, so thank you for the question. It's quite difficult, but anyway, I fully understand those who feel that by switching to renewable energy immediately after coal, they are missing out some step. But and that is the fact that gas can be considered cleaner than coal, but it is still a fossil fuel and contributes to climate change. And another very important point is that it is much better to rely on local resources because of the security of the supply. For example, Hungary does not have a lot of natural gas. 80% of the natural gas is imported, and we feel the disadvantages of this situation really strongly during the energy crisis. So maybe renewable energy sources should not only be considered as a primary tool for environmental sustainability, but also to enhance the security of supply by diversifying the energy sources. So all in all, natural gas might seem like a good temporary solution, but I encourage everyone to base their supply as much as possible on local renewable energy sources.
Very good. So, attention. The message was going for more the local renewable mix. This is very good. This needs to be organized. And actually, Jaroslav, the assets to organize is also involving funding, and maybe different funding schemes come here together from your observations within the countries you are putting your focus on. Have you found, and in that sense, can counsel here the audience online and sitting here in the room on how to blend potentially also different funding streams, how to cooperate with the national government and subnational governments?
Yes, actually, I already mentioned the role of structural funds, ERDF or Just Transition Fund, and mentioned concrete projects. So that's definitely is and it will remain important source of funding for the modernization of central heating systems. In Czechia, the country we are also dealing with, I would like to emphasize there is a predominant role of the modernization fund for the modernization of central heating systems. But I would say, as what was asked from the audience, these projects are not easy, and it takes time and money to prepare them properly. So more, I would say, the funding is available and will be available, but to have the good quality of projects, mature projects, which we would like to, it's a different thing. So that is why I would like to emphasize also the funding of the technical assistance and project preparation. Like I mentioned already, Jaspers as one of the options. And basically, what I would like to mention, also colleagues here on the podium mentioned that we need, in my view, policy frameworks or a reinforced share of experience for renewable resources, because we have like waste heat from wastewater treatment plants. We have large-scale heat pumps. How these would be financed? We have in coal regions, for instance, there is a water flowing from the coal mines, which is used in the Preveza system with success. But we have also geothermal, I mentioned, or biomass, or biogas, biomethane. So there are different sources of renewable heat, and I think it's now time to look how these could be in as fast as possible in an economic way and a technically feasible, embedded in the modernized systems, because otherwise I think we risk to be locked in the gas solutions for many decades, maybe. So this is something we would like to avoid. So I wanted to just emphasize the role of the technical assistance and project preparation focused on the renewables in particular, but looking at the same time at the consumers and affordability of heat, which is very important.
Thank you. Maybe then looking at Stefan, you are doing technical assistance also in Austria. And here maybe the question of how the case is prepared, the permissions and for a sustainable energy system. So any counseling and lessons learned from the processes you have been involved in?
Yeah, what really helps in this process is what we heard before, what is mandatory for the large cities to do a municipal heat plan or to do a heat planning in general. In Austria, we even have this mandatory for smaller regions. So every municipality in Styria, for instance, needs to do this heat planning. And we see quite good results from that, because when you do a heat plan, you really know the demand, and you can also integrate the possible renewable energy sources. And it was already mentioned for Hungary, it's important to know which renewable energy sources are locally available, and you can do that with such a heat plan. For instance, we created a map of all wastewater treatment plants, already estimating the heat that they can provide for district heating in Austria. So this is an online tool that is available, and the data is there for free. That is one thing. The second thing that works quite good is that is something for regional administrations or for state administrations to really dedicate area for renewable energies. As we heard it yesterday for Saxony, they're dedicating some areas for wind energy, for electricity. In Austria, we did something similar for solar thermal energy that is on the one hand used for PV, for electricity, but also for large-scale solar thermal plants that provide heat for district heating, because this really makes the processes afterwards much faster if you already have these dedicated areas and you don't need to go through all the administration again.
I actually love geography and dreaming, looking at maps, dreaming where I would like to go next. But actually, there are lots of also atlases online available on waste heat sources, on renewable potentials in your regions. So I'm counseling you, look at those, which you just mentioned, and look also beyond your jurisdiction. Sometimes the potential is also next in the next municipality. So have a regional approach and talk to each other. We talk now, still now to Dasha. What have you experienced in your city with maybe stakeholder engagement? We touched upon it a little bit concerning the communication. Maybe you can give us more information about how you involve citizens, what you have learned there.
As I said, we have a vision and we are exploring the vision. What I meant at the beginning when I said platform, it would help us if there would be sort of a one-stop shop, where you have all the things in one point, because this way we are running from ministry to agency to local sources. So it's kind of difficult. And in the end, we have now applied for the target technical assistance, which will help us to evaluate the different possibilities which we have in the sort of multi-criteria analysis. And this is important for us to speak to our stakeholders, because we want to discuss in the city parliament which options are the best for the city and which way we should go. So this is the first point which we have in mind at the moment and on our table. And we have just discussed during this meeting that we have to start a working group, which would include not only the city, but also the company that is providing the heat, but also the main voices from the citizens, so that they are informed and they are getting the first information and see how the process is going. Because if we would come only at the end with the ready thing, then they would not have all the details and could have questions. And we could also end up not being able to go through with the whole project.
Very good. Caution us. So different tactics of communication, different methods of interaction. Sometimes it's just information, sometimes it's consultation, sometimes it's participation. So these need to be thought well in terms of the overall process in order not to run into a one-way street. Thank you. A pre-warning again. Maybe we have time for one or two more questions from you. So, okay, there is one. Just 1 second, I just wanted to ask and draw our attention to the lovely toolkit that we have developed as part of CRIT. It was a wonderful, I would say, endeavor to have established this district heating working group and have actually sourced the interest, the needs within this working group, and then having accompanied also a review process within the writing of the district heating toolkit, which is available downstairs next to the entrance for you to take a look. Otherwise, Google it and you will find it. And here we outlined the different solutions for the renewable energy mix, pros and cons, weaknesses, strength. So you strategies, different tools, softwares are also included, which you can use to advance. So having said all that, a question now still to Balázs on where have you found within being part of this district heating working group, where have you found new ideas within the discussions, which you would maybe also now share with the audience for their consideration?
I think, and I can say, and I think I can say this on behalf of the other members. But so the district heating working group meetings have been extremely useful for us. So thank you for the organizers. And the toolkit is a really promising tool for professional in the field. But I would like to say a few words about the many excellent ideas that came up during the knowledge transfer. For example, the latest energy storage technologies, such as pit storages, again, has relatively good potential for these, but we had not considered this possibility due to lack of knowledge, of course. Or we also heard a lot about the latest heat pump or solar solution, which have not yet been considered as an option, even though they could be suitable for meeting the summer heat demand. And we also have the storage capacity for this solution. And it was also an excellent idea to test the possible decarbonization solutions by decoupling certain parts of the district heating system and creating a pilot project. I was in a quite fortunate position because I was able to bring the current manager of Eger district heating system to the last meeting, and he gets some first-hand inspiration for the further planning, and our common opinion that the previous mentioned solution were relevant, and maybe this could be integrated to our plans.
Thank you so much for the appreciation and for sharing your lessons. The thanks goes also, of course, to DG Anna, who provided the resources. Then over to the question in the crowd. Yeah, a microphone is brought to you. Please introduce yourself.
Yes.
And
hello, Janis Ramšak, utility company Velenje. My question is, do you see also the opportunity of these small nuclear plants that can also be an option in future to decarbonize the district heating?
Okay, another question maybe? At the back? No? Yes. Be brave. I'm waiting. Yeah, there is another question. Thank you. In the front.
Just one more question. Boštjan Krajnc from Energy Agency Xena, local boy as well as Janis. Do you still see in the future the district heating systems will keep the role for the heat supply as it is today, or there will be in the future more like a small or micro scale or individual systems for the heat supply? So do you still see that large district heating systems will keep their role in the heat supply in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Micro or macro? Then maybe to the panel. On the first question, nuclear, is that a solution? I know we heard about Phoenix. You're looking into it, Gaspar, but maybe comments from the other sides. Would you counsel Stefan to have looking into this solution? Is it a solution?
I don't know. Honestly, I never thought about that because as an Austrian, we decided some time ago to not have nuclear energy. But we're in the lucky situation that we have the Alps in the middle of Austria, so we have a lot of hydropower. I never dealt with nuclear energy, so I don't know that. Sorry.
Okay, well, your message was also clear of not necessarily looking into it, if I understand. Yeah, Jaroslav?
Yes, I possibly cannot comment small nuclear because as far as I know, there is no solution for the time being which would be ready, available and tested, but maybe in the future. In Czechia, there are hopes in this direction in the future. But what I wanted to mention, for the countries which have nuclear power plants like Slovakia or like Czechia, for instance, recently the city of České Budějovice, which is like 800,000 inhabitant city, they have built from nearby nuclear power plant Temelín. They have built a system and connected the city to the nuclear power plant, and it's providing now 30% of the heat to the city. Similar plans are being developed for the second largest city of Brno, around 400,000 inhabitants. There, again, not so nearby, but not that far away, nuclear power plant Dukovany. There are plans to connect Dukovany with the central heating system of Brno, which again could provide maybe more than 50% of the heat to the city of Brno. So these are, of course, not small nuclear. These are existing nuclear power plants, but just wanted to mention these as an example.
Thank you. Actually, in the toolkit, in the district heating toolkit, we also considered writing about it, but since the solution is not yet there, we rather focused on the solutions which are available, but being local renewable in the first place. Looking at Andras and maybe referring to the second question about the balance of microgrids, macrogrids of district heating system, are there guiding thoughts from your side?
Yes, I just want to come back to the SMRs just a second. That from our members, the Finnish and the Hungarian are looking into it, and we don't know about any other members like planning to use so far. And on the microgrids, that we have huge networks in Europe. For example, in Bucharest, in Romania, there is a network with 1 million consumers, and they are struggling to decentralize and decarbonize it. So they are looking into geothermals and to split up the networks into smaller, still not microgrids, but smaller grids. And we also see the uptake of micro-scale district heating networks, for example, in Austria or Denmark. Also from the perspective of vulnerable households who cannot allow for themselves a heat pump to have a renewable heating source. So they rely on the small village to develop a micro-scale district heating network and to supply the heat.
Yeah. Okay. Gaspar, actually, you have the mic
May
already,
I
Stefan.
comment on the second question?
Okay, please do so.
Because I do have a quite strong opinion here.
Oh, then you go.
I think definitely district heating systems will grow for the future, but you really need to sit down with the municipality and look where the future leads you. Where are areas where buildings will be built, where maybe industry comes in, because it's really essential to build a district heating system or extend the district heating system towards areas where you have a high enough heat density. Because as we heard yesterday at the Velenje plant, heat was cheap in the past and the district heating system was extended, and from today's point of view, it is too large now. So this is really an aspect that needs to be considered when you plan the future extension or when you plan a new district heating system.
Thank you. Maybe then we indeed have visually seen your grid, Gaspar, yesterday at the plant. Would you like to compliment and comment?
Ja, se sigurno strinjam z.
So my opinion is the same. Our wish is to beware this heating system. We have a large system, and I think this will be important also in the future. We expect here support from local community, from the state, from the European Union, but I have the same opinion, but there where the system is not working, not efficient, we have to think about other solutions that are available now.
We almost come to an end of this wonderful panel, and I would like to ask actually each one of you again to share one lesson that you have not yet shared, but which you think from your perspective, from your work experience is extremely important. On the question, which kind of policy advice would you give to political decision makers, local, regional or national level, to make it easier for coal regions in transition to transit?
Yeah, so that's also the lesson learned from me. We see that the Velenje district heating network supplies 40,000 people, while Velenje city is only 24,000 citizens. So 24,000 citizens doesn't fall into the scope of the energy efficiency directives, local heating and cooling plans. So I see the potential that they should still do the plan, because the EED pushes, or I have to say, encourages cities below the threshold also to do this plan. So that's my lesson learned, to do these plans jointly together with other cities nearby, because there is a huge potential you could.
Never walk alone. Very good. Tasha.
We have discovered on the road, which we are at the moment, that we are missing technical professional capacities to tackle the problem. And it's really difficult in the budget of the city to find the money to cover the capacities. And it would help if the resources were not allocated not only to the systems as such, but also to having capacities who are taking care of the project, and not only as project managers, but also as technical experts, because it's really important for us to not to make a mistake, you know, and to have people who are professionals in the topic and help us on the road toward the decarbonization.
So a call for staff resources to accompany the process of the implementation. Thank you.
Yes.
Then over to.
Yeah, so what is very important, and it regularly comes up with the discussion in the discussion with the district heating systems, that in Hungary there is no single national guideline on how to implement the decarbonization of district heating. So the authorities leaves all the points of planning and implementation to the responsibility of the companies. So first of all, we need clear guidance on the process, and the other part is the financing, of course. So district heating is a public service, so everyone is interested in to ensure that the EU decarbonization requirements are met as quickly and efficiently as possible. But I think this requires the design and the communication of appropriate financing, and somehow help the district heating companies to reach these fundings.
Thank you. Over to you, Gaspar. Your message.
So with this platform for coal regions and with this fund for just transition, I think this is good direction. We used the mechanism Jasper, and I think we should all use these possibilities that we have available, but I am giving and asking that we need funds for designing of these solutions, because this is also a big cost for local communities. And also we cannot forget for energetic renovation of the buildings. And I think European Commission should have a mechanism here that should support this energetic modernization of buildings, not only for the vulnerable groups, but also for all other users. Thank you.
Because the Commission was asked and or mentioned, Jaroslav, you can respond and also send your message.
Yes, thank you, Karsten. I would like maybe emphasize 3 points. First, I would start with the magnitude of the challenge at the illustration of Czechia, where in 2020, 50% of heat has been generated by coal, more than 30% by natural gas, and 10% by renewables. So you can imagine the huge magnitude of a task to go from 2020, from this mix to projected 2050 energy mix, which should be 100% renewable within 30 years. So two points to achieve this are essential in my point of view. First is to support the local groups, local enthusiasts, such of those who are sitting with me at this podium, like I met in Slovakia or in Czechia. There are also interesting plans to decarbonize already now. So this is very important to be ambitious already now. And second point is to try to promote renewable resources like geothermal, like large-scale heat pumps or thermosolar even, again, to be in the mix as early as possible, of course, if it is technically feasible and affordable, because otherwise we might risk to have a lock-in in the gas solutions which are allowed by 2030, but which would be running much longer beyond 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this firework of different elements here. Indeed, the mix again in focus, which is local. And over to you, Stefan, with your last message.
One technical solution that was briefly mentioned is the consideration of waste heat. And I think that is really important, since you just mentioned an energy mix. It will quite often, or most likely always, be a mix. And it's really important to consider the industry that is nearby an existing district heating network, because using waste heat from industry is, if it's done correct, a win-win situation. The industry gets money for the heat that is wasted otherwise. And for the district heating operator, it's really most likely reliable and a rather cheap source and an easy way to decarbonize a district heating system. For instance, in this Support DHC project, we're working with a city in Austria that wants to use the waste heat from a paper mill and a steel industry. And with that, they can reach up to 60% of the total heat demand. So that's really something that can be quite big and replace a lot of fossil fuels.
Great. With that, dear audience, you're very close to the coffee, but I wanted to share again, inspired by yesterday's lovely party, and a big thank you once again for Velenje, who has organized this. The lyrics that have actually something to do with our matters. So the hook line is indeed, if there is a problem, I solved it, check out the toolkit while Crit revolves it. With that, heat, baby kit, I release you to the coffee, a lovely panel discussion here on stage. Thank you so much. A big applause to the panelists. At 11, we will meet back here sharp. So enjoy the coffee and the toolkit. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can take your seats, please. This conference is very punctual. We're not used to this in Brussels, where a 15-minute delay is starting early. But nevertheless, there's still one session ahead of us. We still have lunch ahead of us, so let's start. I have to say that Karsten before stole the show a little bit. He didn't even allow me to announce the coffee break, but he did rise the energy level quite well. There was a few very useful thoughts in the presentations. I think it was an excellent panel. I will just take one thought. I think Dasha mentioned it. It was the lack of skills and capacity. I think it's a good introduction to the next session and the next panel, where we will discuss the skills of the net zero industries of the future in coal regions, but also wider. And for this reason, I invite to the stage Mr. Robert Pollock, a senior advisor at the Secretariat for the Initiative of the Coal Regions in Transition.
Well, it's lovely to be back with you all. So friends, colleagues, welcome to the penultimate session of what has been a fantastic annual political dialogue. And I'm delighted that many of you are still with us, given the heat, the time, etc. And I know people are still coming in, but in the interest of good timekeeping, let's kick off. Obviously, this session is on skills for net zero industries and the role of just transition observatories in making that transition to net zero industries for the labour force. Okay, thank you. So this session is very much about the role of observatories in ensuring a smooth transition of the labour force to the opportunities that exist in net zero industries. Even closer. Thank you. Anyway, hopefully you can all hear me now. So apologies for the mic. I think it's quite obvious to us all that since the launch of the Coal Regions in Transition initiative, the policy agenda has evolved over time. So when we met in 2018, 2019, the focus was very much on the phase out of fossil fuels and especially the coal, lignite, peat, etc., and dealing with the consequences of that phase out. But now we are seeing the agenda evolve, and it's also about considering the phasing in of new technologies and how we embrace those new technologies to create economic opportunities, employment, and diversification within our respective regional economies. So we have to think, how do we seize these emergent opportunities? And I think the Green Deal Industrial Plan is a good route map for beginning to explore how coal plus regions can capture and harness these opportunities, these new technologies, especially relating to the renewable energy supply chain, wind, solar, hydrogen, heat pumps, carbon capture and storage. There is a range of these new technologies that are now being scaled up and will have a significant impact on our economies. So the Green Deal Industrial Plan that was launched last year was a very ambitious agenda to ensure that over the coming years, the European Union develops its industrial capacity in this area and also attains and achieves a higher level of global competitiveness. And it's going to do that through a number of policy avenues. So firstly, there's the reform of regulation, there's funding, there's also international trade. But right at the heart of the Green Deal Industrial Plan is the need for an appropriate skilled workforce to utilize and embrace these new opportunities. So for us as a community, the Green Deal Industrial Plan very much foregrounds the possibilities of these new technologies for creating employment within our regions. And I think one of the things that strikes me, and I know it strikes many of us, is when we go to coal mines, when we go to power plants, when we visit the supply chain companies, we're always struck by the significant resource of skills and capacities within these industries. You know, we have geologists, we have hydrologists, we have power engineers, we have structural engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, we have ICT experts, we have logistics experts. These are incredible reservoirs of knowledge, expertise, and skills. And we have to ensure that that skill set is transferred over to the industries of tomorrow. Because speaking personally, I grew up in the west of Scotland, where our industry collapsed very rapidly. Shipbuilding, steel, coal, locomotives. And those skills were lost. And you can't bring those skills back. Once they're gone, they're gone. They don't skip a generation, they're gone. So we have to ensure that this significant reservoir of talent is preserved within our regions so that we can move to this new green net zero industrial base. So we've got a big question for this morning. So it's great you're here and you're awake after a fantastic night last night. But the question which we want to explore today is, how do we match this supply of skills, very rich supply of skills, with the emergent labor demands within our regions related to net zero industries? So our session will consider that question, but we will look at it through the particular lens of Just Transition Observatories. And these are observatories that are becoming more common. We have a few very notable examples emerging at the regional level that track and try and understand the relationship between supply and demand so that policy making can be adjusted. Labor market policy, skills and education, investment policy, to ensure that there is this marriage, this union between the skills supply and the emergent demand. So we've got a very fascinating topic this morning that is very timely. And I'm delighted that we have two excellent speakers to frame the discussion and begin to explore some of these topics I mentioned. And that will set the scene for what I hope will be a lively panel discussion. So without any further ado, our first speaker is Barbara Kaufman. Barbara is Director for Employment and Social Governance in DG EMPL. As you're aware, that is the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. Prior to joining the EC in 1991, she worked in the economic policy and research sphere. And during her distinguished career at the European Commission, she has worked on a range of issues, such as macro adjustment and fiscal issues, before joining DG EMPL in 2015. So I think her significant experience makes her an ideal speaker for opening this session. Please, Barbara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning, everybody. I'm extremely pleased to be here at this annual political dialogue on coal regions in transition, my first time. And I have to say I've already learned a lot. And so I'm very happy also to now say some words to you. I think also that Velenje is a great spot to be, both because you can see here very well the challenges and opportunities that the coal regions are facing. Of course, also since it stands out as the European Green Leaf Award winner. And I think also from a touristic point of view, we have seen yesterday, it's a very enjoyable place. So now going to the challenge of transition, I mean, I would like to start by saying that, I mean, by now, and I think we've come quite a long way by now, a very large majority in the EU is clear about the fact that we need to do climate change actions. And the numbers are extremely convincing. 9 out of 10 say, yes, climate change is a serious problem. Of course, we have seen it through the increased incidence of heat waves, floods, also last year experienced painfully in Slovenia. They say they take individual climate action, again, 9 out of 10. And then they also say that the transition has to be just, again, 9 out of 10. So I think it's a clear commitment here in the EU for action. Of course, we would like it to be 100%, but I'm sure we're getting there. And then I think it's also very important that in this transition, and that, of course, it doesn't only come from DG Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, but I would say from the Commission as a whole. We need to take a human-centered approach, and that's also something that this panel is doing today, and so I'm very pleased being here. And indeed, the right skills are extremely important for people to successfully participate in the green transition and then work in the new economy. And also it's very important that the transition is fair. And I think sometimes at the macro level, at the higher EU level, you might sometimes think that could be quite easy because we have these numbers that say that by 2030 we have 1.5 or up to 2.5 million additional jobs in net terms. And now that we have the new commitment to a renewable energy target of 42% by 2030. We're even talking about 3.5 additional jobs, and all that seems to be a bit easy until you think, okay, that the job losses are often also very much concentrated in some sectors and some regions like the coal regions. And then I think the challenge becomes much more real and urgent to put together comprehensive strategies, including social partners, civil society, to diversify the economy, to attract to re-skill, upskill people, and then also to make sure that the place remains an attractive, or it becomes even more attractive to live. And I think, there are already many actions going on, as I could also listen to in the last yesterday. And I think that you all know that the Commission stands ready to support those actions. Now, when it comes specifically to skills, we know that in the clean energy transition, new skill sets are needed, more digital skills, for instance, for software engineering, competences for wind turbine technology, mechanical or electrical engineering skills for installation of solar panels, or transversal competences such as system thinking, and of course also sometimes specific skills, because not every new job that is created must be specifically green. But I do agree very much with what you said, that it is important also to, if you have a high levels of skills in a region, you also want to retain that and not replace it all by, let's say, low value, low salary activity. There have to be different options here, and I think this is very important. I think in general we should know that we have a huge challenge also EU-wide, because people are not enough going into training. So that's why we set ourselves 60% of adults should be in training every year by 2030. That's the target. Right now we are at 40%, and particularly worrying is when you look at energy-intensive sectors, then only 10% of people working in these sectors are participating in training. That's obviously much too low. So we have various we had last year the European Year of the Skills. By the way, it only ended in May. We have a whole skills agenda with 12 flagship actions at the EU level. And just to mention some that are really also relevant here, I think the skills intelligence, being close to the labor market, the current and future labor market needs, then also adapt accordingly the education, the active labor market policies, and the vocational education and training, the Pact for Skills, which brings together partnerships between governments, education and training providers, and social partners to focus on a number of people that are needed with these new skills by that and that time, and then put the money and make it happen. And there we have now 18 sectoral partnerships. One of the last ones was set up that is on renewable energy industrial ecosystems. And as you already mentioned, the net zero industry academies that roll out upskilling and reskilling programs in strategic industries for the green digital transition. The first one that was launched last month was on solar and photovoltaic. Now, I think since we are also talking about the observatories in a moment, let me just say that the skilling has, of course, on the one hand, important sustainable development and competitiveness angles, but it also has a very important fairness angle, because in the end, what you want to do is that you want to create new quality jobs, both in terms of health and safety, but also in terms of level of pay. And so the fairness comes into the skills element, but doesn't stop there, because then we also have to look at other things like distributional impact, social impacts of higher energy prices, for instance. And in that sense, I think it's worth mentioning that we have not only had, as also was mentioned yesterday by Paula, as part of the various regulations that were put in place as part of the Fit for 55, not only looked at individual regulations and said we have to make sure that they are fair by design, for instance, the Energy Efficiency Directive, but we've also put in place a council recommendation on ensuring a fair transition towards climate neutrality. And that was adopted unanimously by all member states in 2022. And it has different components. One being there has to be quality employment, so some measures how to create quality jobs, especially in the green area. There's the part about equal access to quality, affordable, inclusive education and training. And there we're back at skills. And in this context, I would also like to mention we still have a big issue about women participating in the green transition, both, because they're studying less the STEM areas, also what you can see in terms of the numbers of women in these areas. So I think this is part of our challenge. And then, of course, there are also parts dealing with tax benefit systems, social protection systems, making sure distributional impact assessments are carried out, and also affordable essential services and housing. They should be all part of this comprehensive strategy. And it is also very important that social partners, civil society is consulted, and of course the EU funds, to the extent they are available, or national funds, are used to make this happen. We are starting to review this. We have actually finished our first review in terms of how these recommendations are implemented. Okay, there's some progress here and there, but to be frank, in terms of the comprehensive cross-ministry cooperation, I think there's still a lot to be done. Now, in terms of funds, I think you heard a lot yesterday. There's a just transition mechanism, just transition fund, so I don't go into detail. I think you know it very well. Of course, we know that there are already some really important projects, switch from coal energy to the geothermal district heating in Kosice in Slovakia, or here in Sasha, Slovenia. And then the second one that was also mentioned yesterday already is the Social Climate Fund, while the first looks particularly at the regions, the specific regions and needs of people there, the second one looks particularly at vulnerable groups, transport users, vulnerable households, transport users, and micro enterprises, and there basically the funds that are being collected through the ETF revenues on buildings and transport are then partially recycled to mitigate the social impact. I think that's also an important one. And then, of course, you have the European Social Fund, something managed by our DG, almost 100 million over 7 years. Skilling is hugely important. Employment support is hugely important. Childcare services, even to help women to integrate in the labor market, are very important. And then, of course, last but not least, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which had 37% had to be targeted towards climate objectives, and many of these elements are also involving skilling activities. So as a last point, before I end, I wanted to say that we're now working, and that links to the topic, the Fair Transition Observatory, and that is something where basically we plan to launch in the first half of next year a tender whereby this observatory is supposed to help strengthen the evidence base on fairness aspects of the green transition, so better data, evidence collection, to create also knowledge hub and promote an exchange of best practices for addressing the employment and social impacts of the green transition. Then it's also supposed to support policy monitoring, covering a broad range of fairness aspects in the context of the green transition, labor market, skills, education, social protection, inclusion, and services. So very much along the lines of our recommendation. There's also supposed to be an expert advisory group set up involving social partners, and of course close cooperation with local and regional stakeholders is needed in this context. And here basically I would say that I see from what I have read over the activities that already exist, that we can take also a lot of inspiration from those observatories that exist. And with that, I conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, for that insight into the level of policy innovation that is currently ongoing within the Commission and the golden thread of fairness that runs through that policy innovation. And I totally recognise the point you made on the gender recognition within this agenda, a very sound point to make. It was also very encouraging to hear about the innovation in regard to a fair transition observatory at the European Union level. So that ideally frames our discussion this morning, as we will be looking at observatories at the regional level, but we recognise that to have a successful transition, you have to have that alignment, that vertical alignment between the European Union, the member state, the regional level, and also the community level. And I'm sure we'll be getting into those issues of territorial alignment later in our discussion. We have one more speaker, and then we'll be moving on to a panel discussion. Velenje Petit is project leader for SEER, and it is a project for estimating the socio-economic effects of the EU Green Deal's implementation. Very importantly, he is co-author of a very recent report on the labour and market effects of the Green Deal Industrial Plan on just transition regions, so our regions. And I'm sure Milan's research insights will once again help frame our discussion of the panel. So Milan, please, you have the floor.
Great, thank you so much. I do, yes, perfect. And then I just say next, probably, yes. So welcome all, and thank you for being here. I am very well aware that this is the last session and I'm the last speaker. And I do have to say I'm a bit sad, because yesterday, due to some logistical issues, it took me 18 hours to get here. I arrived at 2 in the morning, and this morning I came here and I heard that the party yesterday was the best. And so I had a brilliant, a really tough episode of FOMO, but I hope that sort of I can hear and sort of live vicariously through your experiences. So please share some of the great stories with me afterwards and have them in the back of your mind while you're listening to my speech, because this is what's going to happen at the end. My name is Velenje Petit. I am a facilitator and researcher working on the just transition, industrial, green, labor, and cohesion policies, and project lead of SEER. And SEER, if you go to the next slide, our aim is to provide evidence-based tools to policymakers working on the just transition, because we believe that you already have the solutions, and we try and help you implement them, for example, through research and modeling, through stakeholder engagement, through innovative workshops, to try and see, okay, what are actually the solutions out there that already work, and how can you improve those that are currently being implemented? And for that, our research focuses on 2 key questions on the next slide, which the first that we got from many regional policymakers is, okay, my region is a just transition region, but what is really important for me is how do I strengthen the competitiveness of my businesses, those exist, but also those that are trying to be established. And second, how do I improve the well-being of the citizens in my region? And specifically, the question we got very often was, how can I, as policymaker, ensure that there is enough high-quality jobs for my citizens now, in 10 years from now, and after that? But also, how do I ensure that there are enough skilled people for the work that needs to be done by the businesses in our region? And for that, what we did is we did a model analysis of the effects of the Green Deal Industrial Plan on just transition regions and on the EU as a whole. And we did some interviews with some of you who are here today to understand what are the regional challenges that are varied, or how different are they. And finally, what I would like to share to you today is some reflections on fair transition observatories that are very important as a sort of, the three key conclusions of our research. And for some reason, it's now all number one, and I think they're all as important. But what we found, the first is the green transition effects on the labor market will be felt locally. So really, we're talking about municipal level changes. They should be dealt with regionally. And this is where we saw that if you look at the European labor market, the regions are the relevant level of granularity if you want to do labor policy. And lastly, and this is also inspired by my friend Zdenek Karasek sitting there, really interregional, that's the way to go. If you want to solve problems, you need to look across borders within your country, but also to other countries, and learn from each other and work together towards finding the solutions that are needed. The second thing that we found is green transition policies such as the EU ETS, Social Climate Fund, Just Transition Mechanism. They impact socioeconomic challenges, especially cost of living crisis, but they cannot solve them. So changing green transition policies will not magically solve your social challenges. On the other hand, if you don't use a social and an industrial angle to achieve the green transition, it's not going to work. So really, if you're talking about green transition, you're talking about social change, you're talking about economic change. And this also has the added benefit of enhancing competitiveness. And lastly, if you want to do this effectively, is you need a systems approach for just transition regions. It's not enough to just focus on one sector. You really need to focus on your whole of region transition. And this was based on some of the slides that I'm going to show you now. So the first one is on the next slide, are the effects of the Green Deal Industrial Plan on Europe as a whole. And what you see here is that depending on the scenario that you take, based on the Commission projections, employment is going to rise. And what was interesting, what we found is really you see a shift from people working in services industries to employment. Unemployment decreases, but not by a lot. And the reason for that is just currently in Europe, there's not a lot of unemployed people with the relevant skills in manufacturing. And lastly, and obviously that has the effect of increasing workforce shortage. The only thing what I want to point out is as you can see, it's only about between 1 to 1.5% of the labor force that is affected at Europe. So this is really small. And just to put it into contrast, digitalization is somewhere between 30 to 50% of the amount of jobs. So this is really looking at a Europe level, it's probably that's not where we're going to see the results. So we looked at regions, and we looked at 5 just transition regions on the next slide. And what we saw is that there are sort of 3 categories of regions. On the one hand, if you go one next, you can see the numbers. Yes. On the one hand, you see regions with stable and strong manufacturing industries, such as Silesia and Moravia Silesia, that see little to no effect of the Green Deal Industrial Plan. The second are, I would say, the medium regions, such as Castilla y León in Spain and Hainaut in Belgium, that see some effect, and they have seen a decline in their manufacturing industry and some employment, but not so much. Asturias is here sort of an outlier because that is where there's a big reservoir of people with the relevant skills who work in green industrial sectors. And so this is really, they have the biggest potential benefit. However, and this should be noticed, it doesn't mean that Moravia, Silesia, and Silesia will not or cannot benefit from the Green Deal Industrial Plan. It just shows that because they already have such a strong manufacturing industry, there are not enough people to really go into these other sectors, or even if they were, then it's just a small part of the total manufacturing population. And also in Asturias, it's still relatively small. So this is really why we're saying the effects of the Green New Industrial Plan are going to be local, because we know that they're there, but they're going to be at a local municipal level rather than you can see them at regional level. And this shows also why it's very important to go deeper into the data and see where the change happens. Now, for the changes, and this is also where I want to point out Asturias. Asturias has already identified its potential for this. And this is, on the one hand, yes, you focus on those people that are already employed in the coal sector and try and retrain them, reskill them, and provide new forms of income, for example, in tourism, in former coal mines, as I heard in Velenje is also being done. But also you look to net zero valleys and the hydrogen project, where you look at, okay, what are the jobs now? What are the jobs in 10 years? And what are the jobs afterwards? And I think that's a great example to emulate. Then on the next slide, what you see is what we then were interested in is, okay, what are the regional challenges that need to be overcome? And so we interviewed regional policymakers in 4 regions in northern Sweden. And this is where we found that northern Sweden, like many metropolitan areas in Europe, see labor and skill shortages and see a lack of public services as their big challenge. So that means a lack of housing, lack of education, lack of healthcare. Moravia, Silesia, and Silesia, many industrial heartland areas, see also a big skill shortage, but also youth and brain drain. And one of the reasons that was mentioned is because the relative quality of life compared to alternatives for especially young people is not perceived as high. And so this is a focus area for them. Hainaut in Belgium, this is interesting, and this is more the industrial western areas, where you have communities of high structural unemployment coexisting next to regions which really need the work. And there we see it's more a social cultural problem that focuses around the communities rather than specific lacking skills. And the 4th region in Asturias and Castilla y León is much more about, okay, what are the employment industries, or what are the ability for young people to find quality jobs? Are they there, or if not, then people move away. One thing that we found that all regions share is a lack of resources to deal with the challenges, showing why it's so important for just transition mechanism and associated funding to be there. Aging is something that every region is facing. And lastly, the cost of living crisis. Again, as we saw, the green transition policies were not mentioned by any of the regions as a direct cause of their social challenges, but it was saying as a challenge here. And I think here I would like to call out also Moravia, Silesia as a region where they said, okay, how can we really address all of these issues in a way that addresses them at the core and not just sort of at the surface, and to work together with regional governments within Czechia, with the national government, but also regions across Silesia and regions in Slovakia to really build sort of a strong regional cooperation to build a just transition. Then on the next slide was what we saw from being inspired by all these regions, all these stories we were told. And we realized actually what was happening was that many of you are operating on what we call a system change compass towards a just transition. And what you see here in the middle are the key actors for a just transition. And each of the regions we talked to had varied approaches to address these 6 key actors. The outer circle, these are the processes. So for example, in Moravia, Silesia, it's about territorial cooperation with other regions, but it's about civil dialogue, working together. It's about multi-level governance. And I think this is what shows like a proper just transition. Asturias also was one where we saw this happen at many different levels. And lastly, in the green area, this is a socio-economic system. These are what the rules, the norms and the rules are that govern the interactions between them. And so what we're now going to publish in a couple of months from now is a guide for each of these elements to say, okay, what are the barriers to change and what are currently already solutions being implemented to overcome them, so that it's easy for regions to understand from each other how can they learn from each other and how can they see what is applicable for them and not. And I think, and this is where for me, one example was that I recently heard and spoke to is Lausitz in Germany, in Spremberg, which is one of the last lignite mines in Germany, that realized after the fall, or now with the experience of after the fall of the wall, what happens to a region if your key industries leave. It's not enough to just focus on the workers in these industries. You really need to think through what is our region going to look like in 30 years from now? What are the industries that could be relevant for that? And how do we do that? And how do we bring everyone along? And how do we cooperate together? And I think these are these examples that show what is possible if you work together. But I also really am acknowledging the difficulty, and that's why I'm very, very impressed by the work that you're doing and the persistence that you have. And I think that's why the last slide is why just transition or fair transition observatories are so important. One is to monitor socioeconomic indicators at a local level, because this is really where this change happened as much as at a European level. Second, is analyzing and sharing best practices, and I'm afraid that I'm copying Ms. Kaufman here, even though I didn't know that that was already what they were doing, but this is based on our research what we found. But also not only what works, but also what doesn't work. Thirdly, it's supporting with policy intelligence, and this is what we realize is that local and regional policymakers need to understand what is coming at them from a EU level, from a national level, but also to help them understand how can they influence policy at these levels, right? Because it needs to be a two-way street, not just top-down communication. Fourth is developing and supporting reskilling pathways, and this is about understanding what are the skills that are already there, what are the people, what can they do, and at the same time, what do businesses need, and how can you get there? It's not just about what we have and where we need to be, but it's also how do you get there? And this is a very personal thing. And lastly, it's about strengthening territorial cooperation, and this is one of the speakers later from the University of Western Macedonia said that they're not only working within the local community and within Greece, but also within the broader Western Balkans. And I think that's a very good example of how these observatories can work. And as a concluding remark, also with the big thunderstorms yesterday, what I realized is the labor market is just like the weather. Yes, there are global trends. It affects us all, but it's also very local. And when it's good, we become happy. When it's not so much. And an observatory, like a good weather station, can help us understand how the weather is going to be tomorrow. And as a Dutchman, I know the value of if I go out without proper rain clothes, and because the weather station didn't give me the good observation, I'll be very unhappy. But if I know what's going to come, then I'm prepared. And then I know that whatever is going to hit me, I'll be there. And so in the end, observatories are like the key to happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Milan. That was a superb synthesis of an excellent report. So I commend you all to read the report. It is one of the best reports I've read this year. So if you are going to read one report in the coming weeks, please read Milan's report. I loved your analogy of the weather, because that's what it is. It's global shifts, but the rain is local and the sun is local. A great analogy. So thank you for sharing that. And I also thought your 5 potential roles for an observatory neatly set the scene for our panel discussion. And I was also struck, just one last reflection, I was struck that the issue of aging was consistent across your case study regions. And I think that's that whole notion that demography really is one of the greatest indicators for economic success. And I think, if a population is aging, if a population is decreasing, you have issues. And I think that takes us into that point you make. This is about systems change. And so the observatories will have to look at a range of indicators, economic, social, environmental, and how you manage that data and tell a compelling story that allows you to then modify your policy accordingly will be a challenge. But I think it's a challenge we're all up for, and I think it's a challenge which we can address collectively. So thank you, Milan. I'm going to be moving on to the panel, but I thought we should ask a couple of questions just to get you thinking before the panel. So 2 short questions, and it's just as simple as raise your hand. So the first question is, how optimistic are you that the new net zero industries can become major employers in your region? So I'd like to firstly ask those who are optimistic, then I'll ask those who are pessimistic. And to be honest, it's quite legitimate to be unsure because it's a complex issue. So there's no right or wrong answers here. So in regard to question 1, who are the optimists in the audience? Can I see a show of hands? Okay. That's not quite what I was expecting. There's the optimism, which is great. Optimism springs eternal, which is great, but it's a fairly limited show of hands. Can we see those who are more pessimistic in outlook? Quite. Thank you, Carol, for that. Okay, so that was interesting about even between optimists and pessimists. And those who are unsure. Yeah. And given you raised your hand, Carol, I'm assuming unsure and realism, there's a convergence. So there is a lack of confidence, or there is still a degree of concern about the potential for these new industries to create major employment. And my second question just leads us in neatly to the actual panel discussion. Are you aware of any plans of creating a Just Transition Observatory in your region? As I said, there are examples, and I'm delighted that we've got two fantastic examples joining us on the panel. But are you aware of such initiatives within your own regions? 1, 2. Okay, so that's good. There is a smattering of hands. Perhaps about 10 hands were raised, so that's positive. So thank you for setting the context for the conversation, because it's very important that the panel understand what the audience is thinking, and there were some very clear messages in that regard. So the first person I would like to invite to join the panel is Maria Diaz-Aguado, and it seems very appropriate given the reference to Asturias in Milan's presentation. Maria is Director General for Energy and Mining of the Government of the Principality of Asturias. She was previously a mining engineer. Of course. You merit applause, of course. She was previously a mining engineer and has a distinguished academic and research career in relation to energy and energy transition. I must say, from personal experience, I know she is a key actor in Asturias in ensuring a just transition, and one for Asturias that maintains the region's significant industrial base. So we look forward to your observations on the creation of your regional observatory. The next person I would like to invite to the stage is Jonas Bakarus. Jonas is chair of the Regional Development and Cross-Border Studies at the University of West Macedonia. He is a respected academic and expert on issues such as regional innovation and research, and is a prolific writer and advisor on these topics. And again, it's wonderful to have Jonas on the panel, as they have made great strides forward in the creation and development of their Just Transition Observatory. And it was delightful to hear Milan making reference to it as well. So there's a nice linkage between what we've heard so far. The final panelist is Ben Lennon, and Ben is from the European Trade Union Confederation. He is an advisor in the Trade Union Confederation that represents 45 million members, and he's had hands-on experience of just transition policy and implementation across a range of sectors, including fossil fuels, construction, and agriculture. So I'll leave it there, and I'll move over to get the panel discussion going, because I think it'll be a very rich one. Okay. Well, Maria, you were first on the stage, so it seems appropriate that you receive the first question. So can you give some examples, of the net zero industries, the green industries in Asturias that will create the jobs for the affected workers of transition? And the second part of the question is, how can the Just Transition Observatory assist this process of labour market adjustment, linking the affected workers to these new opportunities? Please.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much. And I want to say thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you to the beautiful city and region, the city of Velenje and this region, and the party from yesterday, of course. I'm sorry, Neil, I'm very sorry, but And I think that when I join you, when I'm with you, one of the first things I feel is that we all have this basis of coal in our identity, and that makes us very similar. And the party from yesterday was a very good example of that. We are coal people, and we showed that yesterday. Sorry again. And thank you also, because I'm always very combative when I come to these meetings. But today, I'm not going to be combative. That's good news for you. Because I want to say thank you to the European Commission. For the first time, I have the feeling that we are being listened to. I have the feeling that the European Commission is listening to the regions, to the territories, and that is very important. So we want that to go on, but thank you very much for listening to us. And after that, I'm going to focus on this greener industry. Asturias has 1 million people and 3 transitions going on. I always say that because this is very important. Closure of coal mines in 2017, the closure of coal power plants, it's going on mainly, and the rest is going to be going on next year. And also the decarbonization, the need to decarbonize an industry very intensive in energy and emissions, hard to abate. And those are the 3 areas where we can find new jobs, but mainly in 2 types of projects. On one side, we have projects taking place in all the, let's say, pre-existing industries, installations, or pre-existing businesses. And this type of employment we need there, it's not really new employment. When I talk of mining, energy, industry, we have very high quality employment because it's located at home in their territory, because they are very high skilled people, but also because they have very good salaries. So we not only need to create jobs, we need to create very good jobs to compensate for this. So on one side, as I'm saying, all what's happening on pre-existing installations is very worrying, because in that it's not new employment we're talking about. We're talking about maintaining the existing employment. Only in some exceptional cases we have new employment, and maintaining this employment is really very important for us. It's true, it's good quality employment, it's in the territory, it's good because we have temporary new employment in these, let's say, opportunities, but it's only an issue of maintaining what we have. I would say for that, we have in mining all the reclamations of mines going on, where we are allocating almost 200 miners coming from the job list we have in the region. And that's good, of course. It's almost 100 million we are dedicating to that. The regional administration is dedicating the money for that. Then if we talk about energy, we have, of course, renewable energy. Mainly we have photovoltaic projects for the industry. For example, we have now going on the biggest industrial photovoltaic project in a zinc company, Glencore. That wasn't very that wasn't very typical. Glencore was never thinking of renewable energy, and it's a very, let's say, energy-intensive company. So it's very good to see all these initiatives going on. Also, we have thermal renewable energies going on. For example, UNOSA with mine water initiatives, which are very interesting. We have mobility initiatives collaborating with these companies that want to decarbonize and also creating new opportunities of job. And we have energy efficiency as a very, very important, let's say, market for this employment that has to be maintained. It contributes to the competitiveness of industries, of course, but also it helps with new employment for these, let's say, installations or projects going on. For this, we are allocating 160 million euros of European and national and regional budget at present time, not just transition fund, other funding. And we notice that for each euro we give, we get like 4 to 5 euros in return. This means that with this, we are generating 1,000 million euros of projects, and we can maintain the employment taking place. And of course, we have a third big important, let's say, part, which is the industry itself and decarbonization. And in that, I would say ArcelorMittal with a huge project. You all know it's over 450 million euros of, let's say, European and national money for that, and almost 40 million of regional budget for that. And that's going to be a huge project we want to support. But that's not enough. We need more and new projects. We need diversifying projects, and most of them are again related to energy. And in these projects, we have fertilizers, green fertilizers going on. We have, that's Fertiberia. We have methanol and e-fuels going on. We have HyMet with a huge project in Gijón. We have EDP and hydrogen valleys going on also in the region. And of course, we also have components. All these energy projects have the components in the value chain. And we are going to use the Just Transition Fund for that. We are going to launch next week the call of 40 million euros, the first call for the value chain for all these industries. We need to make greener net zero industry. And that's why I'm so optimistic, because we are launching the call, 40 million euros, and we can extend that to 120 million euros. And we expect in this first call at least 500 new employments. The observatory, Milan said what it is for, to monitor and to re-skill people and see where to re-skill them. So as an introduction, I think I was too long already.
Opinions are always very much valued, Maria. So it was an excellent summary of the situation in Asturias. And I've often thought, if Just Transition doesn't work in Asturias, where is it going to work, given your significant industrial base? And it's not just about energy transition, it's about industrial transition. And the ArcelorMittal project in Gijón is just so fundamental to the future of the European steel industry. So chapeau to you. Anyway, Yanis, again, Western Macedonia is a co-region which we're very familiar with. It's done a lot of innovative policy making. It's introduced a lot of innovative initiatives such as the Observatory. So I just would appreciate your views on, how does Western Macedonia harness these opportunities, these net zero industry opportunities? And what is the role of the Just Transition Observatory in that regard? And you are in quite an exceptional place because you have one up and running. So over to you, Yanis.
Thank you, Robert. I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation. I'll start giving an example. I moved to Western Macedonia in 2003. The first workshop I attended there as a young professor, at that time young professor at the university, was about decarbonization, about 22 years ago. And then I attended hundreds or thousands of workshops on decarbonization. And I'm so glad because our government 5 years ago decided that this is it, and 2028 we get rid of all those coal power plants. That's a fact now. So what we have to do, or what we decided to do, is we are losing in a region with less than 300,000 population, we are losing about 30,000 jobs, 10% of the whole population, not of the working population. So it's a huge number. Just to make the long story short, it seems that we have the money, but we need to make sure that we are spending the money fair and wisely. So we thought that creating an just energy transition observatory would be the right movement. I'm glad that what Milan proposed for the concept of those observatories are more or less not 100%, but very close to 100% what we are doing in our observatory. In our observatory, actually, we have two main channels of inputs. Monitoring is the one, at repository of existing work all around Europe and the world as a repository. And we have another two channels for output one channel again towards the repository, the work we done, we put in our repository so everybody can see it. It's public. The Just Energy Transition Observatory, we call it JETO, is financed by European Union, so it's available to the public. It's not private business. And the second output channel is direct advice to our policy makers and mainly to our society, and even more important, to our businesses. So that's the whole observatory theme. We are almost ready, not almost ready, we are ready. We have produced a lot of work on energy poverty, on energy projects, energy business projects. So if you enter our observatory, you can see exactly the place where a new development is starting or has already started or will be started in a few months. So for us, for Western Macedonia, I can say that our observatory is the heart of the transition process. And I have to say that, at least for Western Macedonia, money is not the object there. They are money. The thing is how we use those money more wisely and in a more efficient way, so we can actually benefit as much as we can for our region. After so long discussion period, I believe that now there is no opposition to this plan. Everybody has accepted that. So that's for sure.
And I loved your description of the observatory being the heart of the just transition process. And when we spoke last week and you said, you know, just transition just isn't about money. It's about spending the money wisely. And I know we're all under pressure to spend money and spend it within tight timeframes. And when you apply those external pressures, spending money wisely can be challenging. So a great overview. So thank you for that. Ben, we heard from Barbara at the outset that, you know, just transition, fair transition has to be a people-centered approach. And it seems very appropriate to bring you into this discussion now. You know, you represent 45 million workers across Europe. So we've been very much looking at the regional level, but perhaps we take it up to the European level. And it's about workers, it's people-centered. So what do you think your members are expecting? What do you want to see from the observatories now and perhaps in the future? So please, Ben.
Yeah, so I mean, thankfully, what our members want to see is exactly what Milan has outlined in his 5 points, and then what everyone else in the panel has also mentioned. I think for us, maybe if we were to focus on one of the points, it would be on data and the need kind of like granular impact of kind of the employment changes. And then why this matters is that I think there is already, we do, not to prioritize one of the points over the others, but we have a lot of best practice out there already. What we don't have in most regions is actually the numbers on the ground of the impact of the transition. And if we kind of have this information, we can give this, you know, coming from a regional level, we can give it to those who best understand the local labour market. And that's trade unions and employers who can work together with regional government to plan for the future in kind of 5 to 10 years of what the impacts will be. Because we need to retrain workers now for the changes that we know are going to come to avoid redundancies. I think one very easy and clear example is in the agricultural sector. I think it was 2 summers ago, due to climate change, you know, Spain lost half its olive oil crop. We need to be kind of open and honest about the impacts of global warming, what's it going to have on agriculture. and map and model where these changes are going to occur and go there now and retrain the workers, in the other areas that are likely to be affected, when it's actually much more socially and economically, it's far less costly to do it proactively and in advance. And, you asked what do we need to see. I think we have some really good examples of regional just transition observatories, but we don't have enough of them. If we only have them in certain areas, we're kind of reinforcing this winners and losers approach across Europe, and we need to make the kind of gains universal for everyone. And I know, to anyone working in, regional government, they think these might be expensive or they're a lot of hard work. I know they are. I've heard a lot about how much work everyone puts into them. But it's you're better off spending the money now than after the fact when it's too late. And I think to attempt to plan possibly the biggest change in our economy in decades without this information is going to make a hard job a lot harder.
Thank you, Ben, for that perspective at the European level and your plea for consistency at that level and at the regional level. I'd quite like to stay at the European level, and it's great to have you, Barbara, as a director from DG EMPL on the panel today. So I'm wondering if you have any observations from the discussion today, or just obviously from your experience of what is the role of data collection in regarding the creation, the development of these green jobs?
Yeah, I have to say, first of all, it's not so easy to talk at the EU level when we hear these concrete experiences and efforts that are being made, where I really see that, what has to happen in terms of analysis and then vision and strategy is actually taking place. From that point of view, it's difficult to give any advice, I would say. Of course, for my directorate called governance and whatever, employment social governance, but we do a lot of reports, and it's very, actually I got the title analysis on top of it lately, but I can only say that evidence is so important for anything. How can we, how can we do the right policies if we don't know where we stand, what is the impact, what would be the impact of future policies? So I'm a great believer in data collection, and admittedly it's not always so easy, but I think it is true we have to have it also at the granular level. I'm sometimes, because of my ESF responsibilities, I'm also going to Greece and Cyprus, and they have also observatories looking at poverty pockets in certain regions. And I think you have to go to this very granular level to really see in the end what will be the impact, where do people live, what will be the impact if this company closes, and how do we bring them along? I also actually think that involving people will be very important. Of course, we always talk about, involving social partners and civil societies. Here we're probably also talking about the workers that work at the plant and may not have a job. What are their ambitions? And also what do they see for their children? So in the end, let's say one of the things that I mentioned as part of the skills agenda is this skills intelligence, looking at not only in the next 5 years, but 30, 40 years, what is it what we are going to need? Then we will have to provide the right curricula. And in the end, I think it's also very important. Actually, I had one of the brochures that was outside talked about the importance of communication, because I think you also have to communicate a vision to the people that you want to retain in the region, as with a new perspective, both in terms of work and in terms of life.
Thank you for that excellent intervention. I think evidence-based policymaking is essential at all levels, from the European level, obviously, down to the municipal level. I take your point on the granularity. I thought your final point was a bit of a killer point, communication. And it comes back to what Yanis was saying. This has to be a transparent process, and this information and data has to be accessible. It has to tell stories of change. you can't just communicate raw data. You have to communicate a narrative around that data. And that's going to be vital for maintaining the legitimacy of the just transition process at the European level all the way to the municipal level. Milan, I'm conscious we're running quite short of time, but you have undertaken quite a significant piece of primary research recently. And I was just, the room, we have many policymakers in the room. Have you any sort of final thoughts in regard to what policymakers need to do, one or two thoughts on securing these, new green industries through matching with local labor supply?
The answer is easy, but it's difficult. Build on your strength, and it's knowing what you do best. And I think this is where, on the one hand, smart specialization is definitely one thing that makes sense, but also smart diversification. So look at what are the resources and the capabilities you already have in your region, what are they currently doing, and what might they otherwise be doing? And one great example was from Silesia, where they said, well, most of our coal miners are the best skilled to work in construction industry. And in Poland, we have a huge problem with constructing, for example, tunnels for public transport systems. And so this is one of these things where how can you connect them to jobs that are actually quite relevant to the skill sets that they already have. And so I would advise every region to focus on what are the skill sets that are needed that we already sort of have, that is easy to acquire, rather than, okay, I'm going to learn something completely different. Because I think everyone in this room knows it's easier to do something one step to the side or one step to the front, like a little dance move. It's much more difficult to go as a football player and suddenly go swimming. So I think this is, don't be a swimmer if you can play a ball sport. I think that's, oh yeah, and the second thing is also communication. It's also about listening. And I think this is something that, as a researcher, one of the things that I learned from the whole research is spending a couple of hours listening to people working on this. For example, Zdenek told me much more than months and months of reading through the raw data. And I think that's also, for me personally, what I take away from this. And also something that, at least I'm telling to all other researchers, is go out there more and listen more, rather than just think that you already have all the answers.
A superb intervention, a superb short intervention, but you covered a lot of ground. I love the concept of smart diversification, and it was interesting that we returned to communication by emphasizing communication as a two-way process. I'd now like to turn to our colleagues from Asturias and Western Macedonia, and Maria first. Your observatory is ready to launch, and I know the amount of effort that you've put into it. It's a very impressive observatory. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or reflections or advice to the people in the room who are thinking of setting up a similar initiative. We did see a show of hands. I think there was maybe about 8 or 10 hands in the room of regions that are interested in setting up such an initiative. So what's your advice?
Well, I wouldn't say advice, because advice is too much. I would tell you my experience, and maybe from the very origin of it, I would encourage policymakers to be part of the observatory from the very beginning. That's something for me very important. We have launched the observatory from the regional government. It's a huge effort. You need a team, because you need to listen a lot, as Milan was saying, and you cannot listen the whole time. You need a very good team and a very good technical assistance. In our case, the energy agency or a university behind you. But it's very good to be part of it, because then you are involved in the observatory. It's very important to bring in as many people as possible to listen to their voices. We bring in the regional government, the national government, municipalities too, municipalities in transition, in just transition, but the other municipalities in the region, because we want to affect them all. We bring in the university, of course, research centers, unions are a very important part of the observatory, companies, associations of professionals, NGOs, and of course, a young association to young people, which are a very important part. And also, it's very important to know what you want to monitor. You need data. What data are you going to analyze? And this is a huge work too, because now we have hundreds of indicators and we have to choose the best ones. And this is a huge work. And I would say that another very important thing is to identify success and fail. and to be humble enough to recognize you are wrong. And this is very difficult if you're a policymaker, but you need to do this because we need to see where the mistakes are and we need to change things. And this is what the observatory is for. And also we want to make it transparent to all the people. The observatory is already working, but we have to launch the web page. I promise it will be before the 15th of August. I promise that here in public, before the 15th of August, the web page will be accessible to everybody and not only to the members of the observatory as it is now. And I invite you to visit it and to make comments also because we want to improve that. We want it to be transparent and we want it to be an exercise of transparency and also to help to reskilling. And we have huge challenges. And you said the main one, Barbara, communication. This is not worthy if we cannot communicate. So there are a lot of things going on, but we need to, going back to your comparison, I want to be the weather station, but I also want to change the weather. So tell me how to do that, please.
Yanis, obviously you're in quite a unique position because you have an observatory that's up and running. So one of the things we've heard about is the need for evidence-based policy making. So I'm wondering, from your experience of the observatory, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience, lessons or insights on how the observatory has shaped policy making at the regional level? That could be in the area of skills and education, etc., or whatever you think is the most important area to communicate. Thank you.
Yes. In our case, the situation was different than Asturias. We're creating this observatory because we've been financed by the LIFE initiative. So it was a project. From C-Trans project, Massimo from Sardinia is here as well. Our colleagues from Stara Zagora, Bulgaria were here. They had to leave due to the plane schedule. So in our case, we had to finish the observatory during the life of the project. We hasn't finished yet. The project will finish next June. So it's we'll have another year to refine it if it's needed. We have a slightly, because I know I talked to a colleague of you from Asturias who is responsible for developing all this in Asturias. In Asturias, they are using almost 1,000. The guy said almost 1,000 indices, which in our case we're using less than 20. Because it's that's a completely different perspective. We have to discuss with the people. We can have between us Zoom and to discuss it. Why this tremendous difference is not just another. The second I would like to say is just. The physical place of an observatory is the regional governance of its region. It's not the university, it's not the unions, it's not. It has to be under the umbrella of the regional government. It doesn't matter if there is a technical support team, a scientific support, or whatever, because. We are lucky now because we have a good communication with our government, a local government, with the local government at his team, so we can communicate what we are fighting in our observatory. But it's not in a constitutional way, I could say, that we need. So. If I can talk again from my experiences, definitely I believe you need somebody to carry this. And I'm sure that as in everything in our life, we need some champions to go ahead. and then when you develop it, it will stay on it. It will work with. Well, that's my main message, if I can say. Just it's a regional business, and I wanted to say to the, if I can talk to the Commission, which I can. I agree with you that. This time it seems that the Commission is listening. It wasn't the case some decades ago. I can say that the Commission has to undertake an initiative in order to put some very general axis lines, what they want to see. So to have a uniform development of observatories, because if I have a different development than Asturias, for example, which we don't, we have more or less the same development, at the end of the day, my data or Asturias data would be useless for the other region. So we need to produce at least the same type of data. That's it.
Thank you, Yanis. And a very practical, pragmatic point to end on, the need for consistency of data so we can compare across regions and municipalities. Ben, it only seems right that the last question goes to you. As we've said, transition will only be successful if it's a workforce-focused transition. And I just was wondering if, from the discussion, whether you've thought, identified any one or two key challenges for transferring current labor supply to meet the future demand or the current and emerging demand. And just your final thoughts on what is the role of labor market intelligence in that regard. So over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I think obviously on this panel, but also throughout yesterday and today, the theme of skills shortage has come up, skills shortage in the net zero fields. And like the ideal transition for us is that as one heavy polluting industry closes down, we have another one opening as close to or at the same time as possible that's either green or low carbon. And this often doesn't happen because the skilled workers aren't there. And kind of with our members, something that we consistently advocate for to kind of address this is a European level just transition directive that kind of looks at the anticipation and management of change, where companies work with the regional observatories to kind of proactively plan their skills needs and work together with trade unions, but also other employers and also regions. And this would kind of ensure that everyone has the right to reskill, lifelong learning, and that we use the regional observatories to look at the needs of like the workforce that currently exists, but also, young people and unemployed people, about how we can get them, the right training for the right jobs at the right time, where we kind of proactively plan the transition rather than reactive. And to do this, I think you have to see the just transition not just as a single thing like an observatory, but a whole package of measures that work together. And I think what we are currently lacking is a kind of a EU-wide right to reskilling. As I said earlier, like we have lots of good stories of individual cases where this is happening. In some countries, it's much more developed than others. But if we want to bring everyone with us and, particularly ensure that Central and Eastern Europe aren't left behind, we need to make this a kind of a European level change.
Thank you, Ben. An excellent point to end on, and very much emphasizing the observatories should not just purely focus on those in employment. It also has to look at a wider question of labor market. So we heard earlier about the need for more women within the transition process and these new net zero opportunities. You mentioned young people, the future of the workforce, the excluded as well. So the Just Transition Observatory will become a pivotal instrument in just transition. I still am drawn to Yanis's, reference to the heart of just transition, the beating heart of just transition. Anyway, I'm wondering if there are any questions from the audience, because it has been an incredibly rich discussion. So, right, we've got one here and then one at the back. Sorry, it's quite dark for me. I think my eyesight's going. I need stronger glasses.
Thank you very much. My name is Radana Kratochilova. I'm from Czech Republic. I have 3 questions, and I hope that throughout the time I'm speaking, I won't forget them, as the party yesterday was pretty long and grand. First question, it's to Barbara. I was really interested about and I think I've heard it for some time, about the Fair Transition Observatory. We have 3 coal regions in the Czech Republic, and of course, for us, the data is crucial. And we've heard that the comparison is very important. And Milan said that regional data, even going to the municipality, is absolutely important. So my question is, to what level of data on the regional level will you go with your observatory? And to what sectoral level will you combine it? And can we use the data, for example, at the municipal level? When the data will be, that's the second question, because of course we're planning not for 2027, which is around the corner when the Just Transition program finish, but of course beyond 10 years, 15 years. But we need to know now already, because we're planning for the new programming period. And the third question was towards the regional observatories, probably to Yanis or others. What source of financing are you using for that? So 3 questions. I made it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll take the question that was first directed to you, Barbara. But I think it's important to say the plans for the Fair Transition Observatory are still evolving. But if you would like to say a few words.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Indeed, you put me a little bit on the spot, because launching a tender next year doesn't mean we have it all figured out. And I think I see also the data still a bit as a challenge, because if I think even of national data, what we normally do is we cooperate with Eurostat. Eurostat cooperates with national statistical offices, and they then, after years of discussions, finally agree on the provision of national data to Eurostat. Therefore, I would say I also see here that in some regions you have already observatories, or they are being set up. So I think one important aspect is what was said earlier, that maybe we should also work on some harmonization, or what kind of things we want to see, as opposed to the Commission itself collecting those data. And therefore, I think I would say also on the availability, it's too early for me to say. But you also mentioned basically granularity, both in terms of sectors and municipalities. And I mean, I had myself said earlier that of course for certain policies to be successful, you will have to be at that level. But whether it's the Commission producing this data, or actually more encouraging you to collect certain data, that's still, I mean, I think it's rather the latter, to tell you the truth. And there's also the part about exchanging good practices, providing then the forum for those that have already successful observatories and data collection to show how they're doing it. But maybe I even said too much, considering that we're still in the planning phase. Thank you.
Thank you for those insights. We had the final question. Was a very practical question about resourcing. So I'd quite like to ask, Maria, you've gone for the mic first. So how is it resourced? Then you can hand the mic over to Yanis once you've answered that on the resourcing.
Yeah, well, first of all, Barbara, we are ready to share with you whatever you need, please. So, I mean, it's very important to harmonize all those data, and we have the assistance of a START program, specifically to identify what kind of indicators and communication has to be done. So it's very important to be together. Regarding funding, it depends, I would say, but I'm going to give concrete numbers. It depends on how you do it. We are using a lot our own resources. That means our own people and our own energy agencies. So all the work of people of listening, of working, of preparing things. That's done with the own resources of the administration. But in addition to that, we have spent 200,000 euros for the artificial intelligence tool, a very powerful one, and also to develop the web page. And we estimate more or less 10,000 euros per year to maintain and make the actualizations of the web page. Together with that, I have also designated 150,000 euros to one of the specific results we already found, which is the need to make offices in the territory. So I have launched five specific offices in the territory to identify best practices and to work with people and local communities, and also to develop communities of energy. So I would say in total, 350,000 at the moment.
We try to find some different sources of funding. I'll give you an example. Lately, last year, we persuaded the Ministry of Education to finance 5 different PhD programs. So we have now 5 PhD candidates, students, to work on all the aspects of the observatory. That's pretty productive way, because you bring young people in this story, and the rest of the money. The rest of the money comes either from different European projects when Observatory plays a small part of this project, not full financed. And our main funding source is the special transition mechanism for Greece. The transition mechanism when really we have enough money to do things there.
Giannis, so 2 different models of resourcing there, so many routes to the top of the mountain. We had one other question at the back, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eliza Bernea. I run the Just Transition campaign for Romania with Bankwatch. I'm going to pick up on a point that Ben made on the differences in East Central Europe. And I was wondering, because we kept addressing this point of quality, new created jobs. And at least in East Central Europe, what we see is this tendency, business tendency of doing more of what we already know how to do instead of maybe learning what we could be doing. And over that, you have maybe a fair share of informality still, and also bringing in workforce from other parts of the world because of a deficit in some sectors. So I was wondering, considering all of these factors, what do you see as important in ensuring this fundamental dimension of quality in the jobs that we create? Thank you.
Ben, given the sort of cross-border nature of the question, I think it falls to you to give your reflections on that one.
Yeah, so for us, quality jobs isn't just about pay, but it's about kind of career progression, satisfaction, lifelong learning, reskilling. I think, as I said earlier, a problem we see from our members is that the transition isn't happening as much in Central and Eastern Europe, if at all. And indeed, support for it isn't guaranteed to last forever. And I think there's lots of examples of ways in different countries in Europe that you can compel companies to proactively plan for the transition. But these rights aren't uniform. And I think, as I said earlier, that's why we're advocating for a Just Transition Directive that would compel companies to kind of put forward maybe annual or biannual plans about what the likely impact of climate and other factors will be on their work. And then kind of work with social partners while developing like trade union capacity to organize their members to advocate for what they want to see as the change and how they can be part of that change. I think Robert mentioned earlier the kind of deindustrialization in Scotland and the north of England, and there people kind of talk about how they had history done to them and the kind of, the economic scarring that's still left there behind. But I think if we empower a genuine right to kind of reskilling for every worker across Europe and for companies to proactively plan the change, you can have workers and companies leading the transition and being part of the change that we need to see across Europe.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have any other questions? I'll try and peer more intently into the audience. No, I think that's it. I think there's obviously a desire for lunch and some regeneration of our own. It's been a fascinating panel discussion. I think if I had been in the audience, I might have asked one question. We talk about how do we ensure that skills are maintained within regions. One of the things that always strikes me about Coal Plus regions is the social capacity. The rich cultural and behavioral experience of these communities that has shaped their economic future. And that's how do we ensure that social capacity is also tracked and applied. So that's one thing I would have asked from the floor. But anyway, that's for another time because we're sadly out of time. But it's been an incredibly rich discussion, very encouraging, optimistic discussion because there has been consistency across the panel, all the way from the sort of European level to the regional and the affected communities. So a very positive discussion. And I think the tone was set when we said, it has to be a human-centered transition. And that does then have implications for what we track and the kind of data that we track and the kind of narrative that we then have to generate. I thought communications came out strongly from all the speakers. Communication is a two-way process, and so that should be remembered. But I was very heartened by the call for consistency and harmonization and alignment, which I thought were very powerful words that emerged in our discussion. So I'd just like you to thank the panel, and then we break for lunch. Although perhaps I should hand over to the MC for that. But first, can we thank the panel?
Thanks indeed. Thank you, Robert, and thanks to all the panelists. Before we proceed with some logistics and launch announcement, allowed me to be a little bit mean. Milan, you mentioned the party a couple of times. I heard you have arrived at 2 in the morning. A birdie told me that it was still going, so you could have joined it. But yeah, more about that over lunch break. We still have a couple of closing speeches, so I thank the panelists and kindly ask you to take your seats in the audience. And indeed, I can concur that there have been several positive messages on the panel. I have even heard a little bit of a compliment to the European Commission. I've heard several times that you have been listening to the regions. And with this in mind, let's listen what the Commission has to say. Paula, I kindly ask you to take the floor for some final remarks.
So thank you for giving me the honor and privilege to conclude, but I'm not the last one, almost last one, these 2 days. And I'd like to thank very, very sincerely and warmly for the excellent organization, hospitality, to Velenje municipality, to Mayor Dermol and all his tireless team, in particular Carla, Vanessa, Itok, who without whom this event would simply not have been possible. The program, including yesterday's memorable party, we need to mention it, which brought our community to dance together, put very promising perspectives for our work ahead. Thanks also to the Secretariat of the Coal Regions in Transition Initiative, to the colleagues in DG Energy, Eva, Veronique, in Employment, in Regio, and to you, enthusiastic and committed participants, for fueling interesting exchanges and reflections, for a very, very enthusiastic master of ceremonies, Gregor, all the panelists and moderators. These 2 days of exchanges of the 5th Annual Political Dialogue brought forward the opportunities, but also the challenges linked to the energy transition and the coal phase-out, in the presence of our Executive Vice President Šefčovič, Ministers Jevček and Minister Novak. We reactivated the Karlovy Vary Annual Political Dialogue statement of last year, which was signed by 22 coal plus political representatives and was discussed at 3 council formations and the Committee of Regions recently, and which is providing really a very valuable compass for our work in the coal regions in transition. Our exchanges over these 2 days highlighted that the transition is a longer-term process, so we'll still be here for a while, and therefore very good to know that we are in great company. We know it's in full speed, but it will be here to stay, and therefore we need continued financial and technical support for the coal regions also in the future. It was also clear that we need to look at the opportunities in the context of industrial competitiveness of the EU, where coal regions can play a very important role as future industrial clusters, and we discussed the challenges, the opportunities linked to the employment and to skills. We recalled and confirmed that regional and local levels are where the transition takes place, where it plays out, and where the impacts are particularly felt. And we also heard how important the inter-regional cooperation is, spanning even across national borders. We discussed the need to protect the most vulnerable from negative consequences of the transition, the need to empower citizens to take an active part, and we discussed some solutions to combat energy poverty, including through energy efficiency, through energy communities, the Social Climate Fund, and the role that decarbonization can play in decarbonization of buildings in particular can play in tackling energy poverty. We also discussed the particular challenge of decarbonizing district heating systems in coal regions, which might impact the population when they are cut off of their main source of heat, the need to actively explore alternative sources of heat. Some of you had the opportunity to visit the thermal power plant yesterday, and we could see with our own eyes the challenges linked to it, and how, but also how we can go about it in an active way. We also witnessed and lived yesterday evening the opportunities and the hope for a good future that these regions can have. And we therefore really congratulate Velenje for a very impressive and comprehensive revitalization project, which I'm sure will inspire many regions present at the event. I fully recommend going through the brochure that we were all handed on this revitalization project, and which includes a number of very inspiring projects that are taking place as we speak. Lastly, through the exchanges, it has become clear that public acceptance of the energy transition through public participation, consultation, turning that not in my backyard into please in my backyard is now more important than ever. Communication, putting forward positive stories are thus homework that we can all take back home. And finally, we could not leave Velenje without a clear perspective of our host in 2025. I am very pleased to say that we have a promising candidate, but I will not disclose who it is, so watch this space. And on our side in the Commission, we can reiterate our commitment to supporting the coal regions in its decarbonization journey. Again, many thanks to all of you who contributed, and it's all of you who contributed to make this event a success. We look forward to seeing you back soon. And meanwhile, safe return. And for those prolonging their stay, and rightly so, in Slovenia, enjoy your stay. But as said, I'm not having the final word, so I just move on to our Master of Ceremonies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paula, for your, as always, encouraging words. And you also mentioned the hospitality of the local community. And I think who better to encapsulate that characteristics as the mayor of the city of Velenje, Mr. Peter Dermol. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The fifth political dialogue is coming to a close. I would like to thank everyone who has shared their experiences and their insights into the needs of coal regions with us. Such events give us new insights and emphasizes the need that in the transition phase we will have to be active and that we will have to know how to participate amongst each other. It is true, coal regions in Europe are varied depending on fossil fuels, the number of employees, potential for the future economic development, geographic characteristics, and so on. But all regions are facing challenges while phasing out coal. And we have to face these challenges so that lives after the transition can be healthy and of high quality. We all know that green transition is necessary. However, it has to be thought out and it has to be accepted by the people. Important findings of the political dialogue could be summed up into the following points. The Fair Transition Fund is very useful and should be kept and should remain in the future as well. The existing mechanism is ongoing, but in one financial perspective, we cannot solve all the challenges that we are facing. This is why all the regions are striving to ensure that the mechanism after the year 2027 remains as one of the most important financial instruments for the support of regions in transition. It is key that we keep the bottom-up approach, that people who live in such regions can say what our needs are, and based on the needs, we can shape the politics. And in this way, we can ensure that we have jobs, that we have life standards, which will keep and bring young people into the region who will shape our future. I am very much aware of the fact that we have to support innovations and development, which is an important foundation for creating new opportunities in coal regions. During transition, we have to look for sources in the fund to ensure that it supports other social segments as well, not only the economy, but also tourism, sport, and education, as well as other fields. We are certain that strong cities build strong regions, and strong regions build a strong Europe. A second important point is that we need decarbonization of district heating systems in Europe with sustainable solutions. We have to optimize the use of thermal energy. This is a technically very complex project for which we require time and financial means. In this area, we still require support by the European Investment Bank and the financial mechanisms such as Target, Jaspers, Elena, and similar projects. Third point, or third finding, I should say, we have to implement additional financial mechanisms for the implementation of heating systems of buildings. Heating energy and electrical energy should be one of the most important measures for the green transitions. This is why we have to renovate all buildings. But the implementation of such measures, because of the large personal investments, should not push people to the social edge of the society. This is why we have to ensure additional financial mechanisms which will ensure and which will reach citizens and the users of actual buildings. And the aim is that to ensure that people will decide to renovate their own buildings. We have to support and strengthen the network of climate offices in Europe to advise people of measures and to have a positive influence on the costs that occur. One of these solutions could be a social climate fund. However, in such a mechanism, we need more information about that. In the research climate plans, which will be the basis for such a fund, the coal regions have to be included as co-creators of such plans. Fourth point, communication with the public is key for a successful and a positive implementation of a green transition. Political decision makers on all levels have to be a good example to people who are dependent on the coal activities, and we have to ensure that they have social and financial safety and that we leave no one behind. I am very happy that the Vice President of the European Commission, Milos Šefčovič, has adopted the initiative that on one of the future platform of coal regions in Brussels, we link even more and we present the challenges that we are facing as coal regions. Our role in the year to come will be even more important, taking into account the fact that the European Parliament and the European Commission will have a new composition, and the fact that in the next year we will have a discussion and a decision-making on the financial perspective after the year 2027. I am certain that we have had a very successful conference, and the presence of the Vice President of the European Commission gave it a special weight. This is why I feel it is absolutely an honor to be able to host such an event in Velenje. We have tried to show you in the field how our transition is happening, and I'm certain that in 3 years we will have a lot more to show you. And to conclude, I have to personally thank everyone who have contributed to the organization of the 5th political dialogue. Special thanks go to DJI Energy. I was especially told to emphasize Ms. Paula, Ms. Veronica, and Ms. Eva. Thank you very much for your contribution. An additional thanks goes to the entire Secretariat. Thank you to my co-workers who have put in a lot of effort to organize an expert, but also a relaxed discussion, a relaxed conference. And as I can see, today we have reached that goal as well. I hope that all of you who were present here in Velenje will keep Velenje in a pleasant memory, and that you will return to our beautiful and sunny city once more. And at this point, good luck, as the coal miners in our region say. I wish you all the best to your regions, and the good luck to Europe as well. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Dermol. I can share the assessment of the success of the conference, and I would not be a proper MC if I didn't have some logistical information to close with, so bear with me for one more minute. There is a feedback survey available, both on the event itself as well as on the initiative for coal regions in transition. Feel free to scan the QR code, but as I was made aware, the link to the survey will also be shared by the organizers. Be fair, it's an open and fair survey, but do keep in mind a little bit the fun we had yesterday when you provide your answers. We have some information on the shuttle transfers to the airport. One, as mentioned, is leaving from Hotel Paca in about 10 minutes. Lunch boxes will be prepared because probably you won't have enough time for lunch, which will be served outside. And there will be another shuttle service tomorrow on the 13th of July at 11 from, first of all, from Hotel Paca, then to Terme Doberna, and then directly to the airport. For those of you leaving to Brussels, take out your sweaters. It's 15 degrees and rainy. So, last but not least, it's time for lunch, which will be served just outside. Don't forget the lunch boxes in case you have to leave. Thanks to everyone for your participation at this very successful event. Also, according to my own assessment, thanks to the online audience. Have a safe journey back, and let's continue the enthusiasm for a just, prosperous, and green future for all. Thank you.